Thank you. We have a great way to start our meeting this morning. We have Deshawn Scarborough from the Martin Luther King Commission is here. I don't know if Secretary wants to say some remarks first, but we're glad that you and your team are here today.
So I think one of the things that is important to remind the board and the community is when we look at the support that our agency provides, it's more than just K-12, and now recently we're helping support early learning and child care programs, and then articulation with post-secondary institutions and career and technical centers across the state. But one of what I kind of think is sometimes is our best kept secrets is the work that Deshawn, he's the executive director at the Martin Luther King Jr. Commission, does for our state, for our schools, for our students. And to my knowledge, that we haven't had a presentation of some of the projects and updates in the work that they're doing to our board. So we thought it would be fitting because they're also gearing up for back to school mode and doing a lot of community projects all across the state and have continued to support students and communities statewide. So I thought it'd be fitting for the board to learn more about Deshawn and his team and tell us a little bit what they do and how we work together. So what is it that you do, Deshawn?
I carry your briefcase on weekends. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much for inviting me, Secretary Oliva. And it's good to see a lot of good friends from the past, being able to say hello. We had an opportunity to work with Mr. Henderson down in Blytheville. We had a great program there last year, and thank you so much. Welcoming this morning, I had an opportunity to meet several of you, and if you have any questions toward the end, please feel free to do so. But I wanted to talk more so just a little bit about who I am. My name is Deshawn Scarborough. I'm the director for the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission. And, I can tell you a lot about the commission, but instead, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the person a little bit. So, I am a proud father of 3. All right, so I too understand and feel, going back, Dr. Moore, about the importance of education and having your kids go back and appreciating teachers. This week has been busy for us in doing so. Recently, I just celebrated we will be celebrating my 20-year anniversary with my wife. So y'all give it a round of applause there. Come on. Who would stay with me that long, right? Somebody, she needs to be applauded. At any rate, 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to take her down to our favorite beach, Panama City Beach in Florida. So Dr. Oliva knows a little bit about that one in Florida. But when we were driving down, I had an opportunity I had 3 kids in the back seat, and they were just driving, and they were getting loud. And my middle child, who's my daughter, she stopped, and she said, "I know it, just ask them." So I stopped for a minute. I said, "Wait a minute." I pulled over on the side of the road and said, "Look, what's going on back here?" They were arguing over who was daddy's favorite. So I said, to my oldest child, Deshawn Scarborough Jr., he's 28, and I said, "Hey, DJ," we call him DJ. I said, "DJ, look, you're not my favorite. There's something unique about you. You're my oldest child. You will always be my namesake. I love you, but you're not my favorite." I feel like I gotta let them know right away, because it causes problems if they feel like they're more favored than the other. So then I said to my youngest child, Braxton, he's 7. "Braxton, you're not my favorite." And he looks at me like he's sure he was. And I said, "Braxton, you're not my favorite. I love you. There's something unique about you, but you're not my favorite. Daddy doesn't have favorites." So I told my daughter, Kennedy, she's 11, "You're not daddy's favorite. I love you. There's something unique about you, but daddy doesn't have favorites. I love you all the same." But when it comes to state organizations like the Arkansas Department of Education, Higher Ed, DESA, many more, I have a favorite. And it is you, the Arkansas Department of Education. So give yourselves a round of applause. So I'm going to grab this clicker and ask that you guys just help me just a little bit here. A little bit earlier, we were talking about the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission, and I wanted to just tell you, our goal is to promote racial harmony multicultural diversity, and social equality for all Arkansans. We are legislatively mandated to exemplify leadership for all youth and allow them the opportunity to matriculate in their endeavors. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means we have an opportunity to bounce around the state of Arkansas in all 4 congressional districts, presenting and specializing in giving those noble tenets espoused by Dr. King. I could not think of anything better or any other division to do this under than the Arkansas Department of Education. And we thank you so much for the support and all that you do to assist us. Now, I do have a couple questions. I want to wake you up just a little bit. My teaser in talking about my kids, I wanted to kind of start off that to give you something personal, but I want to ask you a few questions. When it comes to Dr. King, I want to get everybody involved. So you guys ready? It's an opportunity to win some prizes. I'm going to introduce to you Tim Baker. Come on, Tim. Tim is my top volunteer here. Tim's been with me probably about 4 years. He's a graduate of Shorter College, and he's on his way to Philander Smith College. So give him a round of applause. Tim, I need you to help me. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to ask whoever gets this answer, I want you to give them some of our prizes over here, some snacks, okay? So you were ready. Are you guys ready? All right. So as growing up, Dr. King was encouraged to follow in his parents' footsteps by choosing one of 2 professions. What are they? Well, yeah, that's not fair. Who said that? I mean, that was like 2 seconds. Just go and give her a round of applause. She received it. Teacher or a preacher? The second question. Good job, good job. It's like she was reading my notes up here. All right, so how old was Dr. King when he started college? 16. All right, so let me get some hands. I heard some answers, but let me everybody answer it at one time. Are board members allowed to? You guys start the rules now. I'm getting the brownie points, so sure.
I said 16.
Okay. That's incorrect. I still love you, Ms. Woods. I'll come back. I need a moment. Anyone else? Dr. Wood, you got it now. How you doing?
I do not know.
Dr. Wood says 15. That's correct.
I was close.
All right. All right, give him a round of applause. All right. And he did just join, 15 years old. Now, I'm going to give you a special, and we'll go on and move a little forward. But last one, this is not even up there, but this is off the top of my head. I have the opportunity of working closely with Dr. Bernice King, who is Dr. King's daughter. And I learned his favorite dessert. You're just talking through the family. And I thought that was so cool. So I'm going to let you guys know in a bit on the secret here. What is Dr. King's favorite dessert? You can't Google it, Dr. Smith. I see you back there. Dr. King's favorite dessert. Good answer, but incorrect. Let's get in there. Somebody just said it. Peach cobbler. That is it. Give her a round of applause. Okay, as we move a little forward, I want to talk a little bit about team building. Having the opportunity to work under Secretary Jacob Oliva is really great. And we can go to his slide. It's a great slide of Dr. Oliva here. But I want to talk to, many years ago, as I was a director at a large organization in Florida, it had several campuses or several facilities throughout the state. And one of the things we did, we had leadership building organization days where we would bring in leadership development. From that leadership development, we would talk to each other, and we found ways to enhance and better our communication and transparency within our organization. By doing so, we had these organizations, these things that we would have in our team building skills called uh-ohs. Everybody say, uh-oh. Uh-oh. There he is, look at it. All right, that was during our 30th anniversary of celebration where we had about 2,000 kids in front of the state capitol, right? He did an amazing job coming out speaking. Well, during those uh-ohs, it's something I want to talk to many of you guys about as team members throughout the Arkansas Department of Education. We were taught that when there is an uh-oh, no matter how big or small it is, to let someone know about it when it comes to transparency. So when we say, uh-oh, we know we need to stop right away and bring someone in. So I've had the pleasure of being able to work with Secretary Oliva, and now he gets to understand me a little bit better because I never explained this to him. But there are times when those issues come up through the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission. No matter, this is a true story, what time of day it is or time of night it is, when those uh-ohs come up, I'm able to call Secretary Oliva. He'll stop what he's doing and give me a call. And it's been so helpful to me because, one, it keeps the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission out of the news. And that's what I want to encourage everyone to do so here. One thing about the King Commission, we have 13 commissioners comprised throughout the state of Arkansas. So what that means, guys, is those are 13 people that I'm responsible for regarding the way they look in the community. You know, they're serving on our community. They're serving on our board. So I have to look out for what, you know, people think about them and their reputation. Not only that, Secretary Jacob Oliva. Not only that, our governor for the state of Arkansas and our board members for the Arkansas Department of Education. So I take on that task, as do you. But when it also comes to Dr. Bernice King and the legacy of Dr. King, any bad news that's in the public eye regarding Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we would all answer for. So I encourage you all the time, anytime there's a uh-oh, please stop what you're doing and get Dr. Oliva involved and bring some transparency to what's going on. And you know, one thing that we can do better as an organization under the umbrella of ADE, we're all directors. We can work together. It's okay to call and get our cell and run some things across me. Run some things across each other. I can learn a lot from Dr. Smith. I used to bug her like crazy. And then just to get a clarity on different issues that take place. But we can always bounce ideas off each other, and that's what's important. Okay, so I bored you long enough, but I'm going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about some of the organizations that are coming, some of our programs that are coming up. So we've had the privilege of hosting our first ever Unity Visual Fireworks showcasing and honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We started off this year in doing that. It's been truly a blessing. We're looking forward to that. We've also hosted nonviolence youth summits throughout the state of Arkansas. So when it comes to the Arkansas Department of Education, teachers are in schools and they're doing their jobs and they're doing all they can. When Dr. Oliva says there are secret weapons, oftentimes we come in through our nonviolence youth summits and we can teach about things like nonviolence or anti-bullying. For those of you who may or may not remember, in Fordyce last year, there was a big issue on bullying. You guys remember that? The little boy that was choked, and it went worldwide in the media. Well, realizing, sitting back from an Arkansan's point of view, what we wanted to do was take that same negativity that they were posterizing throughout the world and show that, hey, Fordyce, our city right here in Arkansas, is not about that. So we took the same ammunition that they were using, Kim Mundell, in communications, I know you can understand this, to utilize that same platform and take a nonviolence youth summit, make it a massive program, and showcase how positive we really are. We brought Kevin Kelly, as you see here, from Fox 16, who talked about and brought his Step Up, Stop Bullying campaign. We brought in some speakers that the kids loved and enjoyed, that would listen to. And through the help of the Arkansas Department of Education, we were able to then fund that program, thanks to Dr. Stacey Smith back there. So thank you. Give her a round of applause. So having these programs, we're able to do that, bounce across the state. We have one upcoming, and I want to talk a little bit about that. When I first met our secretary, Jacob Oliva, he came to our office and he sat down with me. And when he sat down, one of the first things that he was concerned about, and this is true, he's behind me, but I want to make sure we make the eye contact, which was he was concerned about some of the violence that's going on in our areas of the city. He wanted to know what we could do, in particular, in one particular city, to help alleviate or curb some of that violence that's going on. So one of the first plans of action was he asked me to reach out to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, to the superintendent there, in order to help put together a nonviolence youth summit to get the kids involved. And I want to ask Dr. Carlock to stand up. Thank you for his partnership. We're able to do that on September 28th, this upcoming event. We'll give him a round of applause for we'll be having a nonviolence youth summit. So thank you, Secretary Oliva, for initiating that and making that possible. And I think it's a lot of attention that's going toward Pine Bluff that's negative, and we're pushing back with that to make it positive, and we've been able to do so through the help of each and every one of you. Oftentimes, people quote in the media, and they say Scarborough said this, and they have positive, and people say, hey, he's doing that, or he's doing that, it's great. But I have to tell you, it's not me. A lot of times, it's the team. And that's why I'm giving the praise now, because a lot of folks don't know, but it wasn't me behind the scenes. It was Secretary Jacob Oliva. It was Dr. Carlock that made that happen. So I believe in giving kudos where they belong, and that's why I'm standing up here letting you know. It wasn't me. I too felt as though we needed to get in the city, but Dr. Carlock stepped up along with Secretary Jacob Oliva to make it happen. So we'll be having a youth summit there and at Hall High upcoming September and October. Some of our past programs have been Batesville. We brought in actor Eric Victor Newman. Are you guys fans of like Young and the Restless? Yeah? My grandmother used to have me watching Young and the Restless with her. Anybody else? Am I the only one? So he's come in he's actually ambassador for the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission. So when we need him to speak throughout the state, he comes in and speaks. And the funny thing about it, he doesn't do that anywhere else. If you Google him, he doesn't speak anywhere. He just speaks usually just for us and comes out. So we have the opportunity and pleasure of working with him. And Harrison, Arkansas, many of you know, we've worked in Harrison, Arkansas for some time, helping to dispel the negativity that hovers over Harrison, Arkansas, with being the most racist town. If you Google it, that's what comes up. But, and I'm telling you as director of the King Commission and working with that city for so long, Harrison, Arkansas has great folks there in that community. Outside of Harrison, there's a town 6 miles down the road called Zinc. And there's a gentleman there that posts a lot of negative exposure having to do with racial comments that create negative publicity through the schools up there in Harrison and Northwest Arkansas. And Harrison gets the bad attention for that. So it's not Harrison, it's just one person that takes the P.O. box in Harrison and pushes that information out. And for that reason, we're doing all we can to help partner and align ourselves with our city, because when people see that worldwide, it stops people coming or organizations wanting to come to Arkansas. It helps with economic development to be able to go back and combat some of that negativity, to be able to say, hey, Harrison is not what they say it is. To stand beside them and say, hey, look, we're brothers and sisters and we have to forge forward. So I hear all the rumors and I've heard all the rumors, but I'm here to tell you, it's a great town. Go through there in order to get to the Buffalo River on your way to, what is that, Missouri, Branson, and you will enjoy yourself. We have hosted programs all in Spanish in DeQueen, Arkansas, throughout in Fayetteville. We have Spanish, programs in Spanish throughout the state of Arkansas, through all 4 congressional districts as well. So get involved in any kind of way. I want to close by saying there are outreach programs. Everybody can be great because anyone can serve. We want everyone to be part of it. We are a staff of 4 individuals that make a lot of noise throughout the state, but we cannot do it without our volunteers. And our volunteers are the ones that we like to get involved. So if you know anyone that would like to participate or be part of our organization in giving out school supplies, giving out food for those that are the food deficit that's going on throughout the state. Whoever that you know that would like to assist, please have them contact us. If you yourself would like to assist, please come out and join us. We've had individuals like Dr. Smith come out and help give food away. We've had Ms. Mundell come out, give food away. She came by yesterday to give away school supplies to help us out. So we're so thankful to have a team that supports us. And believe me, being director for the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission, there were times I used to feel left out there by ourselves. And I'm able to connect with the division and feel part as a division of the Arkansas Department of Education to be able to know that there's support when I need it from all of you. And I thank you so much for that reason. But not solely, I'd like to go ahead and close. Well, I appreciate you having me here. If you guys have any questions at this time, I'd love to entertain anything regarding the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. Commission and our outreach program. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah, board members' questions?
Uh-oh, y'all put me on the spot. I'm sweating. Got the board. Yes, sir.
I don't particularly have a question, but I just really got a comment. I just want to, give you big thanks when you came out to Blytheville. It was really receptive. It was a pleasure and an honor for me to be part of the summit. Really good job, and I understand the value in what you're doing and the value of the relationship between you and the Department of Education.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. I appreciate you. All right. Thank you guys so much for having us. And we'd love to come back anytime, so please feel free to come to any of the Arkansas Martin Luther King Jr. programs. Peruse our website at arkingdream.org or call us at 888-290-KING. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. We really appreciate it. And I know we talked about before, my town of Stuttgart has really benefited from you all, and y'all brought a lot of positive things, even this last week, school supply. So thank you very much. Yes, so we're about to get started, but I do think, have y'all looked at the Zoom to get the cameras turned on? We have a board member on. And it would be nice to be able to see. As y'all look at that, we'll look at changes to the agenda. I know board members, we all received an email. Agenda item 4 was added this week, the West Helena waivers. Are there any other changes?
Good morning, Dr. Moore and the board. Courtney Salas Ford to the Department of Education. Just to update you, both of the school choice appeals that were set have been withdrawn by the parent, and so you will not be having any school choice appeal hearings this morning.
Okay, thank you. So that is action agenda item 1.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do we need a motion to add West Helena's?
No, it's been added. It was just, it's on the agenda now. It was just added this week, so just brought it to our attention. Thank you for checking. Did y'all see in Zoom? It just says it's limited. Lee.
Okay, I think she has her camera off.
No, if you try to do
When
it,
we try to start it, it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
but with that, I will take a moment to congratulate and welcome our 2 new board members, Ken Bragg and Lee Keener. I know Ken is out of the country at a long planned trip, and Lee is also out of town, but is joining us here. I'm excited. We have a complete board, and I know we'll all be excited to meet them in person next month and get started on our work together. With that, Lee, can you hear us here?
Yes, I can hear and see everything.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Well, we'll move forward with that if that's okay, and then as soon as we can see you, but we can hear you and you can hear us. So we'll be good. I think with that then, we'll start our action agenda item. Agenda item 2, since 1 is removed, are the Arkansas Secondary Math Standards.
Tiffany Pride, Assistant Commissioner of Learning Services. Come move back a little bit, that's okay. All right. So I am standing before you today for consideration of secondary math standards for high school courses. We're submitting those today to the board for approval. As you know, a group of educators, representative of the state, revised the standards for Algebra 2, Algebra 3, Technical Math, Quantitative Reasoning, Advanced Topics and Modeling, Statistics, Pre-Calculus, Calculus, and Critical Algebra 1. And so I will do a little bit of a overview of what happened with those standards. Before I do that, I do want to recognize our mathematics team. Wave your hands. Their fearless leader, Keisa Mormon, and the rest of her team. We have Jeffrey Nesmith, Bobby Ollies, Sierra Gully, Brittany Nally, and Kim Romaine, and Tanya Price. I want to say their names because they have done so much work on the standards. This is the second part that we're bringing to the board. So I did want to recognize them. There's not a time that we ask them to make an adjustment that they don't do it and they say, we can do it, we'll get it done. So I did want to recognize them. All right, so we'll do a little bit of an overview, and Keisa's back there in case you ask me a hard math question. She's my help. Can I slide it, or would you have to slide it? Okay. It's probably my fault. I sent it in PDF instead of a PowerPoint. All right, so again, we kept our same approach to revision of standards. We wanted to provide strength, clarity, and support for the standards. That's our three-pronged approach. And you see there, just in general, we want to make sure in terms of the strength of our standards that we have a logical learning progression and that we're providing essential knowledge, which is really the content and skills that students need at each grade level. And in particular, what you're viewing are for courses. And then we wanted to make sure the standards were clear, so we clarified the standards. That's making sure our expectations are clear and that we know what our students should know and be able to do. And then just simplifying language, and I see a typo there. And then supporting the standards, making sure we have really strong explanatory front matter for our educators as they dig into the standards and prepare for students, and then making sure we have any other ancillary materials that they may need. So what are the changes in mathematics? Again, making sure that we have parent-friendly language. We know our parents are a very important partner with us in educating their children. And so that necessitates eliminating jargon. You know, sometimes we like to talk jargon, but we need to make sure whatever we're saying or writing down in standards that everybody understands. And so that's one of our changes. Also, making sure that we're attentive to learning progressions. Making sure that our expectations build over time based on the previous expectations and that it's reasonable along the K-12 continuum. So really it just reflects how learning builds over time, and then we're making sure that we have precision in our standards. We eliminated lots of redundancy. Our teacher teams were excellent at that. They will say, you know, this shows up several places. This is where it fits best. So we did considerable amount of, we spent a lot of energy thinking about where do we have redundancy and eliminated that. In terms of Algebra 2 and beyond, we wanted to make sure it was grade appropriate, and that's really important. And so we did that, and then just simplified the organization and structure. So the nomenclature is simple. We don't have to be very complicated to get to the essence of what students are learning, and so we were attentive to that. In particular today, we'll turn to the next slide. We're bringing forward to you secondary courses, and we took sort of the same approach as we did with the first batch we brought to you. Again, I've mentioned a lot of these. The organization is different in that we created consistency across all of our courses in the way that it looks. Technical language, again, we simplified that. Reduction of verbs. We don't want it to be overly complicated. We don't want the teacher guessing, like which one of these should the student be doing, so we simplify those verbs in the standards. And then reorganize the plus standards. And so plus standards, when we think about those, and Keisa and I had a good conversation, if I need backup, I'll pull her up. But plus standards are incorporated into the curriculum to make sure that the courses are more rigorous. So as you think about scaling and you think about complexity within a course, those plus standards help to make it more complex as needed. to prepare students for more rigorous courses. And then also in terms of, well, I'm like, can we turn it one more? Yeah. I think I've moved on without you turning it. I was about to talk about these courses, and you'll see that it shows up in the courses, in the highlights around the courses. And so just thinking about Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, we uncoupled some standards to make sure that it was very clear what should be taught in Algebra 1 and what should be taught in Algebra 2. And so that was important in this work, and the team did a great job with that. And then specifications. Also in thinking about specifications, it really talks about the limitations and the extent to which a particular function or concept in math should be taught. And so those are just parameters for our teachers. And then we have Algebra 3, pre-calculus, and statistics. And so just making sure that those plus standards were in the right place and that teachers knew the specifications around standards. Can you go one more, Chauncey, for me? So this is the list of courses, and I named them when I first came up. Again, this is courses that are available for our students in high school. And then if you look at the very bottom where we have middle school, high school courses, we are asking, in addition to approval of high school courses, that we are able to offer Algebra 1 in 7th and 8th grade. Currently it's offered in 8th grade and high school, but in regards to acceleration for those students that are ready, it would be available statewide without a course code approval for all of our schools. And then in terms of geometry, which currently now is offered in high school grades 9 through 12, will be available statewide for all of our middle school students in 8th grade. So we're also asking, in terms of courses, that we are able to extend those statewide to our middle school students in the spirit of making sure that they are able to accelerate as needed, as they are ready. All right? If you'll give me the next slide. So before I come again with your approval, I'll stop and make sure there aren't any questions or comments.
If I can also just add one thing, thank you, Dr. Pride and the team, for continuing to do this work. If you remember about, I want to say it was around March, we did an update with ELA and math standards, and at that time, the board was asked to consider adopting new K-8 math standards and algebra and geometry standards, and that's because we were moving towards a new assessment, moving back towards end of course exams, and we wanted to make sure that those test items were written to reflect the great work and the progress that's been made with updating those standards. So we prioritize those subjects and grade levels to get that done. But the work we knew as we go through kind of the math paths and look at math progressions, we were going to be coming back to the board. We told the board at that time we'd be coming back to build post-geometry and beyond, and that's what we're asking for the board to consider today, so that we have one nomenclature, we have clear progression, clear and concise language, and very clearly articulated math paths for all of our students.
Thank you. Questions down here, Ms. Hunter? Budridge? Questions? Lee, online, do you have any questions? Okay. I did have a question, if you don't mind. I'll take the time. So when we're looking at these list of courses, can you remind me, I know districts aren't required to offer all of these courses, is that correct? Or how does that work?
So they are, they do offer those courses within the 38 courses that.
Okay, so
districts have
all of these have to be offered?
Yes.
Okay. Are there some optional math courses, or is that something else I'm thinking of?
I'm not sure if you're thinking about the advanced placement courses. They have to offer one in each content area.
Okay.
But they offer them, and if they're available, if there's a group of students who need it, they're able to take it. But they have options. If they don't have a full course, they could very well offer them a virtual course or some other means for them to take the course. But
Okay.
those are in our 38 required courses.
Okay. Do y'all have data on how many students take, especially once we get to, the Algebra 2, Algebra 3 technical math, how many students take each of these courses?
We could definitely get you that information. I don't have it with me today, but we do have that information.
In no rush.
We
I think
could
it'd be
follow up and send it to
a
you.
conversation to
Courtney,
have to
yeah.
see it. I think it'd be interesting to see across the state too, where students are taking those
Courses,
options.
yes.
And then I think certainly as we look to the Algebra 1 and geometry, allowing that without that at the middle school level, getting
Without
more
the
data
course
on.
code approval,
Yeah,
yes.
getting more data on what that looks like.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
sure. All right, so if we. you have a
Well, I do have one
Okay.
question. I was wondering, Mr. Secretary, how does this bridge into the issue related to student success in college algebra when they leave some of these courses and become a freshman in college?
Sure, I think that's a great question, and you're in luck because you're getting a great presentation today that's going to tell you about all the math paths and share the numbers of readiness for our students. So if I could ask to just kind of pause on that question, because I'd like to get, that's a deeper conversation that I'd like to engage the board in when I get to my update.
All right, so thank you so much. All right, so we're asking for approval to the State Board of Education for high school courses. We respectfully submit those to you for your approval. And again, those are Algebra 2, Algebra 3, Technical Math, Quantitative Reasoning, Advanced Topics and Modeling, Statistics, Pre-Calculus, Critical Algebra 1. And then again, we are also bringing forward the opportunity to provide Algebra 1 in grades 7 and 8 and Geometry in grade 8 without a course approval for our middle schools.
Thank you. Okay, floor is open. Any more questions or for a motion?
I would just like to say thank you for all of your work on this and for really simplifying the standards for keeping our parents in mind so
Yes.
they can be more involved. I think that's great. So with that, I would say approve the motion to accept the Arkansas Secondary Math Standards.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Hunter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you, and
you.
thank you to your team
All right,
as
thank
well
you.
for all the hard work y'all are doing. Okay, next up on our agenda are the Education Service Cooperative reports that we looked at part of them last month and decided to batch them and do them now. I think our conversation with co-ops was helpful yesterday. For me, I was thinking about how I didn't do that 5 years ago, but I'm glad we had that, and thank you for you and your team for getting that done.
So my ask for you guys is to approve the annual reports and accept them.
And do we have co-ops online? Okay.
They are on the Zoom.
Okay.
Many of them are.
If we have specific questions, either for the agency or for the co-ops, I'll start down here. Any questions? Questions?
I suppose I have a comment just about the Arch Ford report. It's no secret that I've had some concerns about the ALE program and the certifications that are contained in this report, that they had all licensed personnel in all positions that required a license, or they had appropriate waivers in place, and I don't believe that to be a true statement based on things that we've seen that have come to light over the last few months with regard to the ALE program, at the Crossroads ALE program. Also yesterday, and I appreciated that the director of Arch Ford was there, and he answered some questions pretty directly, and he gave some assurances that come Monday, the program will be a lot different well, I shouldn't put those words in. He said that it will be in compliance with our regulations for ALE programs with regard to the number of teachers, the student-to-teacher ratio, the percentage of time that's live or synchronous instruction, the geographic scope of their outreach, and a couple other things, and I felt good about that. He did reference that there was a report that they had provided the department, and I believe I just got that report just a little while ago, and that left me a little unsatisfied. It appeared to me to just be a list of classes and a campus schedule. Is that all that they've provided you?
I think that what he's been working with Mr. Hogan, ALE, is Mr. Hogan's been asking for who are your teachers, what courses are they assigned to, matching licensing with the course assigned. And so what I believe you received was basically an Excel document that showed scheduling and who the teachers were and what courses they were assigned to teach.
I think all I got was a PDF that just had a list of classes.
Well, I'll be happy to get with Mr. Hogan, make sure we got the right document to you.
Yeah. I guess my question would be, does the department feel that based on information provided to the department from Arch Ford, that the ALE program will be in compliance with the regulations beginning Monday?
Yes, and the department also has them on our, monitoring within the next week to 2 weeks. So we're planning to be boots on the ground, visiting with them. They've been working very closely with Mr. Grant at Arch Ford to make sure that they're ready to go.
Okay. Well, obviously, we'll be dependent on the department's monitoring and, what reporting y'all do of that. And I suppose at this point, all we can do is, trust that they'll do what they've said they'll do.
I like to say trust but verify.
I agree.
This may be out of turn, but I know Ms. Allenbaugh is here, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you sign up for a public comment, or were you just here? Okay. Would you like to speak to the board? And you can say no. I know you've driven here, and I know the first time you ran out of 3 minutes, and so.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with not speaking this way, but I do appreciate you considering that.
Okay. Just because I know everything that has gone on, and when you pulled that one up, I wanted to give you the opportunity since you came all the way here, so.
I'm gonna trust but verify.
Cool, that works for us too. All right.
Any other questions? I do know, like I said, we have the co-ops on, if anyone has any more questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm still learning very much about all this. In the report that I see, I can see the teachers' names, the teacher of record. I don't see their certification, but like you said, trust but verify. The one thing I'm not seeing is the schedule for K through 5. Are those kids, do they follow the school district schedule, or are they in a separate location? Do they have their own schedule? I was just curious about that.
Here, I will get back with Mr. Hogue, and we will write a narrative on moving forward with the Arch Ford ALE. We'll have him do a narrative, especially when he goes to monitor, and we will get that back to you guys.
Thank you. Lee, did you have any other questions? Okay. I appreciate, I understand, this is an annual report, and I appreciate that financial information being provided this way. I don't know if before next year having that conversation, but I think something similar or this would be beneficial as well. Any more questions? Okay, floor is open for a motion.
I would move to approve all of the reports other than the Arch Ford report.
Okay, we have a motion to approve all the reports but one. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Second.
Any questions? Before I vote, I'll ask a question. I'll take a moment to ask a question. What are the ramifications or the consequences of not approving the report?
I'd have to ask legal that. I don't know that there is any consequences. They're required to submit an annual report to this board, and they have done so, and they followed the rules and guidelines outlined and provided that information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions for the motion? So there's a motion and a second on the floor. Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Do you want clarification from Ms. Ford on that?
More questions?
Yes, that'd be great.
Sorry, I didn't see you. Next time, knock me out of the way.
Why would I do that? You handled it. Courtney Salas Ford, Department of Education. Ms. Smith is correct. There is no ramifications. They met their legal requirement. If you want to ask for additional information, you can do that. But in terms of the ALE continuing or anything like that, there's nothing that stops them just because you didn't approve the report.
Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 4, consideration of the Act 1240 waiver for Helena, West Helena School District.
Good morning. Chastity Wagner with ADE Legal. I just wanted to give you our Act 1240 procedures before we proceed. So what you would need to do as the chair is to swear in anyone who is testifying, and I believe Ms. Holland is here to testify for Helena West Helena. At that point in time, the district gets 20 minutes. I don't believe the district will take 20 minutes, but they do get 20 minutes. If there was any opposition, which we have received none, they would also get 20 minutes. So after Ms. Holland concludes, then the board can ask your questions, and then you will take your vote.
Do I need to swear in anyone?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Holland.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, and Doctor.
Yes.
McGee,
If
right.
y'all don't mind standing up. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. If you don't mind, introduce yourself to the mics and you can start your presentation.
Greetings, Madam President, members of the State Board, and Secretary Leva, Dr. McGee, Superintendent of Helena West Helena School District. Pleased to be joined with our Executive Director for Learning Services, Ms. Tracy Holland, here. So we are here for the 1240 waiver approval. We're going to jump right into this, if we may. Next slide. So our goal here is to reduce the number of Act 1240 waivers teachers to 0 by the end of 25-26 school year. If you recall last year, this time last year, I just jumped into Helena with only a week, maybe 2 weeks onto the job. You're gonna see some data here. I think that you will be pleased with the efforts that we've made and going forward. So roughly in 2021, you see that number there. There was 21 waiver teachers to start, 12 waivers at the end of the year. Last year, 14 waivers, 1 hired, 1 paraprofessional, and 5 waivers teachers to the end of the year. So actually last year ended up totaling 24 teachers was actually on that waiver last year by the end of the year. This year we're pleased to start with actually 9. Out of 9, at least 2 for sure would be applying for reciprocity and standard licensure. So that's just a replica of the number that we just gave you, a data chart. A breakdown by schools. You can see Central High School, the content area there. You can see the dyslexia, J.F. Wall, pre-K, the grade level dyslexia. Keep in mind, our goal is to put highly qualified teachers who are licensed content in each grade level who can teach the grade level standards and content at a rigorous level. So the last thing I will ask then and add here are some of our supports to get this number down, the check-ins here, the surveys, the mentor programs that we added. We also contracted with Dr. Brent Miller that will work directly with them to all of our waiver teachers to make sure that they are staying on task and on track to complete the pathway, as well as our PLC process. You can see that we're moving forward. We're big into the PLC process. But lastly, I will add 2 other things that we're trying to do as well. We are partnering with neighboring universities. UALR, we looked to partner with them last year. They've had some turnover there that we're gonna still regain that conversation. We're also looking at our neighboring states, excuse me, Mississippi, Tennessee, where we're recruiting teachers that are ready to go and come forth and to work in our district. And then we also are contracting with the vendors, with our highly quality instruction material vendors such as 95% Group, and also looking at Solution Tree that they provide the job embedded support to the content so that teachers are ready to teach at the grade level content and the standards. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Questions of the board, Ms. Hunter? Mr. Wood?
What are the content areas?
English and mainly ELA and math. Yeah.
I was confused by one of the graphs you had up there. I believe it said dyslexia. Can you explain that?
Those were the dyslexic interventionists. There was several teachers that are teaching the intervention curriculum, Take Flight, that we're using at J.F. Wall and Central High School.
How many?
2.
2? What are their qualifications to do that?
One on each campus, correct.
Okay. And what are their qualifications there?
Most of them have bachelor's degrees. One I know have a bachelor's degree in English, and the other one just have a bachelor's degree.
The program that we've moved to with dyslexia requires certified personnel rather than just like paraprofessionals to be the interventionists.
Sure.
So from last school year, we moved one paraprofessional who had a college degree, so we were able to move her to begin that Take Flight dyslexia program. So that's why we've got her on 1240 waiver, and she's working through becoming CAUT certified. Both of them are actually. So they've got their bachelor's degrees, and they are working through Vicki King at the state through a couple of cohorts to be able to become CAUT certified academic language therapists to be able to utilize that program.
How long is that process?
It's 2 years.
2 years.
So the legislation around creating several hundred certified academic language therapists in our state, there was legislation passed on that 2 years ago. And so the state actually has funded certification programs across the state. It is a 2-year process. While folks are going through the training, they actually have to be directly working with students, and that's the progress monitoring piece, and that is part of the instruction too. So while you're in the program, you're also at the same time working with the kids that your program is working with. So it's kind of this give and take. It's probably the most rigorous literacy training for dyslexia that we have in our state.
What efforts were made to fill those positions with qualified individuals?
We made a strong, conscious effort, recruited, again, with university, contacted several in-state universities as well, reached out to our neighboring districts, University, Mississippi Valley, University of Memphis, as well Arkansas State, University of Arkansas. So we did a lot trying to recruit. We also added, even trying to add incentives and special incentive package to recruit them, to give them sign-on bonus as well. We actually had several teachers that was licensed, but because we were strategic in making sure everybody's taught in that content area, some have left the district, leaving the opening late in the summer. So this is part of the problem that we've had. So, but we're going to continue to look and be creative, where we can offer incentives for teachers that can teach in these highly content areas that are necessary in our region.
This is a similar problem that other districts in and around Helena, all the way to the river, Mississippi River, all the districts are having real difficulty in finding certified staff. I understand your problem.
But I will say to the board that we have done a great job, even, again, like I stated, that we making sure that everyone is teaching their licensed content area.
Right.
We recruiting teachers who are coming from university, who only have to pass. One teacher that we just hired, hopefully you signed off today, she only has to take her last test, and she will be applying for standards. So we're definitely the intention of screening those applicants, and really the intentionality to make sure that we have highly qualified staff who can teach our highly quality instructional materials at grade level.
What's the total number of teaching positions in the district? Total number?
You just had to ask me that.
Roughly.
36 at the elementary, 36 at the elementary, 34 at the high school. Okay. And I would tell you, right now we're licensed, fully staffed, one teacher available only at JAF Wall. And hopefully Secretary Lee will sign off today.
More questions?
How are you supporting your new staff members then?
I
know you talked about mentoring. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
So we're going to be piloting a mentor program in the district where we're going to partner with, and we're going to intentionally streamline the teachers who are veteran teachers to make sure that they are highly qualified to train. But we also want to partner them and work with our Solution Tree vendor contract, as well as work with neighboring vendors to come in, work with them to make sure they're ready to teach at grade level. So they'll have a mentor teacher, they'll have support from the vendor, the curriculum vendor, as well as support with Solution Tree.
And that means you're joining the PLC process?
We are heavily embedded in the PLC process.
Good. How is that going? How is that received?
Going extremely well,
Good.
extremely well. We just kicked it off on Monday. Dr. Sharon Kramer, School Improvement for All, came down, did a great job. The board, the local board is invested in it as well. That many of you have known that we brought in Dr. Janelle Keaton to train the board on how to function as a PLC process. It's going extremely well. It is a learning curve for our staff. And, you know, we have a lot of work to do. And I want to commend my staff for their commitment to this work, because we have been working tirelessly, probably, to be honest with you, again, I say even 7 days a week. It's just a working process, but it's going extremely well.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, part of a question and also a comment. A comment is, you know, I understand some of the challenges, as Mr. Sutton noted, in that area as far as retaining and maintaining certified teachers. But my comment is, I want to compliment you guys. Looking at the previous school year, looking at the trends, y'all were able to sustain more teachers with certifications. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And I know you talked about the outreach and vigorous stuff that you guys are doing, but can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I tell you, the biggest thing that we've done is really intentional changing the culture and the climate, and really making Helena, West Helena, appealing, a safe, collaborative environment where everyone can feel valued, but keeping the student as our focal and primary focus in educating all of our scholars. And shifting that culture has really been a big focus last year for mine, and I want to commend Stacy Smith and the rock star that's back there, Sheila Whitlow, who helped me last year to really shift that culture. While we've made a lot of progress, that is still an ongoing process to get all the staff on board, and from the top all the way down, from the boardroom to the classroom, to really the attention to really just focus on students. It's what I call creating conditions where all of our scholars, district-wide, can become independent thinkers. And we're pushing that because it's going to take all of us. You guys, this is no stranger. We know that Helena has a history, but we really, and I said this last year, and I said this is doable. It is still the same terminology. It's still doable. It's what I've been using. It's going to continue to take time, and we want to continue going in the right direction. I would tell you that I am very confident that we are headed in the right direction to really be more student-focused and really focusing on instruction. Instruction, teaching at grade level with highly qualified teachers. With the instruction is at a rigor. I'm very pleased with the new math standards that you just approved, because we've been pushing and we want to elevate our scholars. We have several students that, and I'm giving you some kudos, and I'm giving you some highlights of our district. We have several of our scholars that are 9th graders that have scored at least a 27 on the ACT. They'll be 10th graders next year. It's going to be big. I'm going to give you another highlight. Last year, ACT Aspiring, and you can pull this, but you can pull Helena, our 3rd graders, ready and exceeding for math was 34%. We only had 78 3rd graders. That's huge for our district. So that was huge. So we're seeing a lot of growth in our data. So it's just going to continue to move forward and just keep working. But I will tell you this again. I said, and I'll close my last 2 words. It's doable. But it's just going to continue to take time.
Certainly, questions?
We, as you probably saw, we had co-op reports this meeting. How closely are you working with the co-op? Are you reaching out for help from them?
Very closely. I serve as the one that's directly on the board, working constantly with our co-op director, really pushing and working with them to collaborate. The intentionality last year was to make sure that they were visible within our schools, but not just visible, we want to be intentional with the work that needed to be done. And I was pleased with our efforts to collaborate to make sure that visibility was ongoing. So the partnership is very strong with our co-op as far as Helena, West Helena School District, and we're going to continue to work together.
Which co-op?
Great Rivers Educational Co-op Service.
Do they
Great.
provide ALE program?
No, no, they do not. I will tell you that we right now house our own ALE program. I will tell you that, Mr. Wood, that has been a focus for me to improve our ALE program. And I've reached out to Dr. Garhire with our new restructured staff. Dr. Andrew Schrader is leading that work to renovate and restructure our ALE program to make sure that we are teaching and focus on instruction, but also the support that they need there so that we can get and address our kids.
Thank you.
More questions? Lee, did you have any questions online? Skinny. Okay, thank you so much. If that, the floor is open for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the waiver.
If there's a motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second to approve the waiver. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Good luck as you start school next week. We're going to move to item number 5, consideration of requests for approval to release for public comment the rules governing school safety.
Good morning. Good morning. You guys all received a copy of the rules this morning. So what we are requesting is that you approve those rules to go out for public comment pending governor office approval. That's what we are requesting.
So questions on the rules? Start down here, Ms. Hunter.
What's the broader process for this? So we release these to the public for comment pending governor's office approval. They go out, is that 30 days, 60 days?
It's a 30-day process.
30 days, and then it comes back to us for consideration of any revisions or proposed amendments or anything like that. How long does that sit in front of us?
Okay, so what will happen is if we get anything that results in substantive change to the rules, which we very well may from public comment, we will actually send them back to the governor's office again. They will come back to you again to go out for another set of public comment. So it'll be a two-step phase. Now, if we don't receive anything that negates substantive change, then they will come back to you again for final approval. Once you have finally approved them, then they will go to Arkansas Legislative Council to review there. After they are approved by the full ALC, then they go to the Secretary of State's office and then are effective 10 days after that.
Okay. And who is involved in putting together these rules?
So we have been working with, Dr. May looked at these rules, subject matter expert there at CJI, so working with them, and then our Safe Schools unit as well. Of course, the Arkansas Safe Schools Committee, we had talked about rules after LEARNS had come out, different things that needed to kind of be changed and fleshed out. So there was communication with that committee as well as I was working through and drafting the rules.
So is this the first set of rules, or is this an amended?
These are the first set of rules. These are brand new rules.
Okay.
Does the commission that Governor Hutchinson started, is that still in existence?
No, that commission has, it submitted its final report, I believe in October. She's over here. In October of last year. So, but we did look at that report and review that report as we were drafting these rules.
Okay.
Yes?
Mr. Sutton, I just wanted to add one thing to your question. So after the commission released its report last year, we did draft these rules and we actually brought them to you. You gave approval to release them for public comment. We took them out for public comment. Before they were finalized, that was when the legislature set aside funding for the school safety grants. And so we ended up promulgating emergency rules to immediately address the needs of that grant. So you have seen these before, they just were never finalized in this form. And so we kind of, after the 23 session, had to go back, add some additional revisions. And so now you're seeing that updated version. And that's what we were asking for final approval on.
Thank you.
I have a question, and maybe just a reminder, what are the schools operating under at this point, starting this school year? Is there already some laws and regulations that they're operating under? Because this seems like it needs to be enforced now.
Yes, ma'am. So the Safe Schools Initiative Act, any of the acts that are listed at the top of the rules, those are all live right now. They're all effective. So these are just to clarify things is really what the rules serve as.
Okay.
More questions to my right? Mr. Simmons. Ms. Keener? Secretary Oliva.
I'll just kind of add to the importance of this work, and as we've worked with the legislature and navigated through this process, and as we've been working with school districts and talking about improving learning, that's always the expectation is to improve learning and outcomes. But at the end of the day, safety is our #1 priority. There is nothing more important that we can do as a school district, a state board policy, than making sure we're putting in place the proper procedures and safeguards to keep our students safe. Every parent that sends their child to school each and every single day deserves the expectation that their child is going to come home unharmed. And while these rules may seem a little overwhelming, and there's definitely a sense of urgency around getting this right, a lot of these practices and procedures are already in place, and our school districts and our leaders emphasize the importance of keeping students safe when they're in our care. A lot of this work codifies what was passed in legislation and strengthens and builds on that foundation. When it comes to school safety, you never arrive. There's always new practices, new research, and new approaches that warrants ongoing conversation. But what I really appreciate about the LEARNS bill and the priorities, when we talk about the S in safety, LEARNS includes safety, and a large part of that is being reflected in these rules today. And it's not just about hardening facilities and best practices and fencing and cameras, but it really tackles and takes a look at that system of care around mental health. And if there's one consistent theme that I've heard talking with school district leaders and superintendents around the state, especially post-pandemic, is that they're seeing a need for more services for their students and for their faculties. And when we talk about building out that system of care around mental health, it's how do we make sure that every child has access to quality mental health education? And how do we make sure that every child has access to the quality mental health services that are needed for them to be, in order to be set up for success in the classroom when they're under our purview and out in the community? And part of this, which is something I think is really important to get this moving, to get right, is mental health training and awareness for all faculty and people that come in contact with students, so that they can recognize signs and symptoms, know what to look for, and then more importantly, know who to call and what to do about it. So we're engaged in this work. There is nothing more important to getting right. Love to get public comment and feedback in moving this forward. In my previous role before joining the state of Arkansas, I had to sit on a task force that I served on for 4 years, where we examined why 17 people were murdered in a school, and I don't ever want to go through that again, and we don't need to bring that here, and we need to keep moving this forward.
It may be in here, I just haven't seen it, but is there a ratio of the number of resource officers per students? How does one determine whether or not they need 1 or 5?
So there's not a ratio that's published anywhere, and we don't publish numbers of school resource officers anyways, because that's a safety concern. So as to how many districts have, that's really determined on a district by district, school by school basis.
And I would add to that, it's hard to come up with a formula ratio because every campus is unique.
I know.
And some schools are designed with safety in mind, and some schools may have multiple buildings and be spread out over multiple acres. So what we would encourage school districts who are now have a named school safety specialist to work with our agency, but also work with their local sheriffs and bring in the emergency responders, emergency operations centers, and develop that plan and make sure that every piece of that campus is protected and the proper amount of adults they can determine at that local level as well.
Have via the LEARNS Act, are districts going to receive additional funding for school safety?
So this past fiscal cycle, and I don't remember the exact amount, but there were hardening grants that went to all of the school districts. And in fact, we're in the process of allocating those funds. I want to say the majority of the funds have been allocated. And to me, I think that's the first step. And a lot of the threat mitigation grants around hardening is important work. And I've traveled this whole state. I've been to a lot of school districts. I've been to a lot of campuses. And there's a lot of work to do in making sure there's single point of access, that there's fencing around campuses and buildings, that we can make sure the threat mitigation component and even adding cameras and radios and adults that are safety and focused in mind. We have a lot of wonderful initiatives happening throughout the state. The CGI team, the training and support they do, the passion and conviction that they have around this work, I think is almost leading the nation when you look at kind of building out those systems. But then we also got to build it out to scale, and we're gonna hit the ground running when it comes to school safety, and continually be reflective and look at how we can invest in ways to make sure that our campuses are safe.
Ms. Keener, online questions?
Yes, I was just wondering, I understand that early childhood often had a separate sort of rules and regulations, the number of tornado drills they had to run, the number of fire drills, things like that. Are we going to see some alignment between the two, or does pre-K still have their own separate schedule, if that makes sense?
So we have not put pre-K into these rules. These rules are just K-12, but that is definitely something that we could discuss going forward, and maybe that's something that we could change.
Thank you. More questions? Okay, with that, then the floor is open. A reminder, this is for approval, pending Governor's Office approval to release for public comment. Is there a motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve the release for public comment, the DESE rules governing school safety, pending Governor's Office approval.
Okay. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hunter. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe so. That is the end of our action agenda. We'll go ahead and do the consent agenda and then take a break for Ms. Sharon to pack up. So let's do that. Consent agenda. Any questions, comments, anything want to be pulled from the consent agenda? Anyone? Lee, Ms. Gainer? I did have a question if Dr. Pride is still in the room, if you don't mind, on item number 3. So item number 3 is embedded courses, and this is approving courses that are partnered together for high school credit, correct?
Yes.
Why don't we see many CTE courses on here partnered? Is that through a different process, or do we not have
We have
them?
a few. We do have the Keystone on today that
Okay.
is combined with professional communications.
Okay.
And I believe tech communications may be a CTE one. I can't verify that. I'll have to verify it. But we do sometimes get that. Keystone is one that naturally would fit because it's about career readiness, so it does match really well with communications. I think it's an opportunity, when possible, for that to happen, but, I think it's the sheer nature of what's needed at the school.
Yeah.
When they think about embedded courses, they embed them based on what they need in terms of their schedule, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I think I'd be interested in having we have working groups right now on career ed and having them look at what are opportunities there to think about, partnering those courses together.
So if I could jump
Yeah,
in
sure.
there, I think this is something that Dr. Warden and Director Ross White are really passionate about. And one of the, I think that we probably don't talk about it enough, but the most innovative parts of LEARNS in that vision of designing a career high school diploma and the work group that's working on that, that question is kind of the foundation of where a lot of the topics of conversations are going, because some of those current technical education courses, especially when you get into the high level of coding or those different levels of computer science, it is a lot of the math courses that we just approved today. There is a direct correlation where if you take numbering in base 10 and put it in base 13, the level of rigor in math required to pass some of those computer science classes, you should also get math credit for that as well. What that looks like, those frameworks and crosswalks have to be vetted and thought about, and that is part of the work that the work groups are working on. So I think there would be value, and my hope is next month during the update at the end of the report is to go a little bit deeper with LEARNS implementation to give the board a better understanding of the focus of each of the work groups and the progress they're making, because that needs to happen. That needs to happen for students, and that needs to happen for what's best for our classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, floor will be open for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Sutton. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to go ahead to allow Ms. Sharon to pack up and take a break. Let's get back here at 10:30, and we start with Pine Bluff.
Yeah.
But then we'll do Pine Bluff. Thank you. Sorry, imagine that. going to start with reports. Our Teacher of the Year, Ms. Salama, is not here today, but we'll look forward to seeing her next week. Do any board members have reports you wanted to share, anything you want to bring up this morning? Then we're going to move along to Ms. Smith and Pine Bluff School District.
All right, so Stacy Smith, we're going to give an overview of Pine Bluff School District. I do want to make a real quick comment before we start talking about Pine Bluff. And I know Helena West Helena has left, and when they were asking for waivers today, I know a lot of you may remember, and some of you don't know, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, they were one of the only districts in the state that basically had a full teacher waiver of everything. They came and asked for that many years ago when a law passed that whatever a charter school had, a public school district had, and they were one of the districts that came and asked for that, and the state board gave them that waiver. And so 3 years ago when we started re-looking at that waiver, and the state board then minimized how many they could have, and that's when the state directly started working with the district. And when we went in and found that they had lots of licensed teachers, but they weren't teaching in the areas they were licensed for, and they were just kind of plugging them in. And so there's been a lot of work done in that district over the last 2 years, getting to where they were today. But 3 short years ago, that's where they were. So a lot of work there. Pine Bluff. I don't know if y'all noticed or not, but we had some folks walking in, and I think they were walking with a stride and some swagger today. Pine Bluff has had a big week. And we've had these folks, I told them they were coming in today, I said it felt like it was a reunion. We got Miss Howell over there, PTO, and we got Miss Mauser, we've got Maddie and Erling Collins, we've got Superintendent Jennifer Barbary, Assistant Superintendent Philip Carlock, Board President Dr. Rice, and so they passed their millage this week for a new high school. Miss Newton, former, there we go. I told you they were in the house, right? I told you.
Brought a DJ.
We're in a much different place than we were a year ago today. Goodness, I'm gonna get emotional up here, y'all. I think Jennifer and I cried on the phone, was it yesterday morning, I think. They've had a big week, and I'm excited for them and excited for the progress that the district as a whole is making. I will not say that we are satisfied with academic progress yet, but I will say we talk about academics all the time now, and that is a significant change from where we were 4.5, 5 years ago when we started this journey with Pine Bluff. Districts under state authority, a lot of times they are failing in academics, but they're failing in every other system that takes away the focus away from academics. And so they have spent lots of time, lots of energy with the state and in the community to try to address some of those. The exit criteria that's been established for districts under state authority kind of hits these big indicators. We will be coming back this next month with the exit criteria and a more intensive report on have they been met, are they sufficient, where we are on that. So you will actually get a scored report similar to what we did with Dollarway before and with Little Rock. Collaborative teams, professional learning communities, that is in process in their district. They have that in place. Monitoring instructional practices. You'll remember when we've talked before about Pine Bluff, making sure we had a certain number of walkthroughs that principals were doing, getting into those classrooms, continuing to coach principals on what the look-fors are, making sure that we are providing teachers with instructional strategies to use in the classroom, that ongoing evaluation system, school curriculum aligned to the science of reading. Within the last 4 years, we have adopted, I think, every subject and made sure teachers had resources and curriculum in their school. And also with fiscal operations. So as we look forward here at the timeline, and I kind of want to walk you through this, the first year was in 2018 and 19. The district was put in fiscal distress, and there was a lot going on. It was like lights were going to be turned off. there were, people weren't going to get paid when the state moved in to assist. In November, after the state moving in and assisting directly, the district requested, their appointed superintendent requested additional level 5 support because we needed assistance with other systems besides just the fiscal side. That first year, there were literacy audits, curriculum audits. They also did a reduction in force. In 2019 and 20, Dr. Owa was still the superintendent at the time. There were over 30 audit findings from the previous year that were reported that year coming in. And so, again, constant cleanup, trying to address things, heavy on professional development. That second year, working in Pine Bluff, lots of conversations about just professional conduct of educators at professional development. We were having issues with people showing up on time, people showing up, and what the clear expectations were. We were pushing in RISE literacy teams to do training for teachers, and we really had to go back and said, this is the expectations for faculty and staff in the district. It's a whole different place now. This is not the same. 2021, so at the end of that year was COVID. So that moves us into kind of our third year there, 2021. The district largely was digital learning, and we know that throughout, especially majority Black districts, that we saw a lot of digital learning happening in those schools, and that was the primary delivery method in those schools. And that pretty much remained all year that way. We had lots of just shifts in curriculum that we had been training on the year before, moving to digital curriculum. It was a very tough year. That year, Barbara Warren was named superintendent of both Dollarway and Pine Bluff, and we operated 2 separate districts that were under state authority with 1 superintendent as we were going through the decision point of whether or not to annex Dollarway into Pine Bluff. That decision was made by the board mid-year, I believe in like December. And so the annexation took place then that very next year. So coming off of COVID, the annexation for 21-22 occurred, and you now had Dollarway and Pine Bluff school districts together. The part of that first annexation part was to make sure that we kept the Dollarway High School open during the transition phase. And so we continued operating the Dollarway schools as is with the Pine Bluff schools. And so that was occurring in 21-22. During that same time frame, you had community advisory committees that were being formed. We had to establish new board zones between the districts. We had to improve fiscal audits from the previous year. But the big thing that happened in 21-22 was high school campus safety became a priority. You probably remember that was probably one of the most, not heated, but emotional or energy, I don't know how I want to describe it, presentations I probably made to you, and just with conversations in the community about what we needed to change specifically at the high school campus to ensure that our students were safe. It was a big year, and lots of changes and lots of shifts. If I had to say there was a year we probably slugged it out, that was it, right? Trying to get on the same page. Moving into this year, 22-23, progress was really being made. I mean, we've got the safety pieces in place. The expectations for the classroom walkthroughs and the use of the curriculum that had been purchased and continued to be provided to our teachers was really going smooth. Curriculum applied to all subjects. The professional learning communities or the collaborations within the teams is still occurring. Continuing our science of reading training and the support provided by the literacy coaches at the department directly to the district. Increased visibility of leadership within the district. This year, they hired new assistant superintendents, and we were able to provide direct support, more support around the superintendent. So that was huge. So you had 2 new assistant superintendents that pushed in and helped there. And just the change in a positive community relations is huge. The millage that was passed this week, 60% of the folks who voted for it, 60%. So it wasn't close. Okay, they won because they had community support. And you know, with any type of millage or ask, there's always, you're gonna have people who have pros and cons, and I think that's okay. But it really says a lot about where the community is as a whole, and how they're supporting their board. In January of last year, we changed superintendents, and of this year. Dr. Jennifer Barbary, she just finished her doctorate degree on top of superintendent. So Jennifer previously worked directly in my office of OCSS, and she directly worked in Pine Bluff, boots on the ground, in the schools, working with principals. I mean, she knew the insides and outs of the district, so she was the perfect person to appoint coming in January to lead the district. At that same time, the board also appointed a limited authority board, and so working closely together this last semester, they've accomplished a lot. It helps if I click my slide with you guys, and so you can see what I'm reading. You wanted to tell me that, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. State board action. So just kind of taking you back to September to December. We had a state board work session to discuss options for the district about whether or not they should have a board or not. This board made the decision to recommend an appointed 7-member board established by the zones that were set the 2 years previously. We accepted applications from Pine Bluff residents, and again, the folks that I called out earlier, they were boots on the ground during that time. They were calling people saying, put your application in, I think you would be someone that would be a good fit for our district. We had over 30 applications for those board zones. A committee chaired by Ms. Newton at the time, members from the School Boards Association and Community Patrons, and a member from my staff, vetted all the applications, actually interviewed all the potential board members, and then made recommendations about who this board should be. And that recommendation was made to this board in December, and the Limited Authority Board in Pine Bluff was established and held their first board meeting in January of 2023. I will say the folks, the resumes, and the folks who are actually on the board in Pine Bluff is impressive. And they could probably hold up against any school district board in the state. Very impressive group of people. So in January to where we are now, again, Dr. Barbary was appointed as superintendent. This school board has done various trainings, including roles and responsibilities that were put forward by Arkansas School Boards Association. They've done 3 separate trainings on fiscal operations. They've done training on due process, state accountability. Their board president, Dr. Rice, has taken all available virtual courses on ASBA. They've had 6 special called meetings. They've had 8 work sessions, and they've had 7 regular board meetings in this time. So they've been busy. And they've been very busy. And with that, the findings on how they've progressed as a board, they've maintained professional meetings, and they've been committed to growth. And when I say their commitment to growth is their commitment as a board to continuous learning and asking questions and asking people to come in and present, to do work sessions around things or areas before they make decisions. Their meetings have been professional, and they've maintained professional decorum throughout. Even when they've had very challenging meetings with patrons challenging whether or not we're doing a millage or where the high school should be placed, which you know that was a huge debate. They've maintained the expectations of what a board should be. They've had transparent decision-making. They've had lots of work sessions, answered lots of questions, especially around the millage. They've made themselves available. They have made themselves available to press. In fact, we got the Pine Bluff commercial here today. I don't want to leave you out, I see. You always show up. And they have demonstrated stability and effective governance for the district. And that was really, this is the first time we've done a established board like this ahead of time, going back to a district in this manner. And they've been very successful. Each month, or every board packet that they have, it does come to the department. We review each item, and then the secretary signs off on it. And so in terms of, you know, overturning decisions that they've made. They've been consistent in thinking out their decisions and us being able to support those. Another thing that I wanted to point out is Superintendent Barbary is an appointed superintendent, okay? This board has supported and worked very closely with her. I almost think at times they probably forget she's appointed. I think they've accepted her as their own, and I think she pretty much accepts them as that's her district. She is from that area, so it's very personal to her as well. So recommendations as far as next steps for this board. I would recommend that it's time for the Pine Bluff School District, Jennifer, Dr. Barbary, and her board, Dr. Rice, at an upcoming meeting, that they present to you. That they present to you their celebrations of this past year. They present to you their 23-24 district improvement plans, what they've identified are things that they need to work on to move forward, and how they're going to do that, so that you can ask questions specific to that. Where they have identified needed support for them to continue to be successful, and the plan that they think would be best for their community on how to move towards an elected board. In July, I sat down and interviewed their school board president, and we talked through many of these things. Some of the ideas and suggestions and conversations we've had, he's going to take back to his board. They probably already started some of those discussions. But this is what I would recommend for this board as we move forward. Their 5-year date for level 5 is in November. And so a decision to return the district back to local control would probably need to happen in either September or October. Okay? So that is my presentation today. Does anybody have any questions for this for today?
How are they using the Dalloway campus?
So they have actually shifted some of their campuses. This last year, they actually they didn't close it, but they moved the Dalloway High School students, 10th through 12th grade, to the main Pine Bluff campus. And they reconfigured what Jack Roby was. Jennifer, I may need to let you come up and explain this, but they reconfigured several of their buildings. They are using the Dalloway campuses, though. Those were identified as, go ahead.
So all students at some point will go through Dalloway for certain grades?
Jennifer Barbary, Superintendent, Pine Bluff School District. Yes, we're excited. This school year, the 23-24 school year, we're merging all students together. And we're representing the entire district by using the campuses across the entire district. So,
it's coming.
yes, no, but we did. We're no longer using Jack Roby. And so next school year, our junior high, Pine Bluff Junior High, will be on the former Dalloway campuses, which were the Robert F. Moorhead Middle School and Dalloway High School that's on Fluker Street. So 7th and 8th grade will attend Robert Moorhead. All 7th and 8th grade, and all 9th grade will attend at the former Dalloway High School, which is right across the street. So we're gonna have a Pine Bluff Junior High, but create a 9th grade academy.
Are any buildings slated to be sold?
That's a board decision, and so we're gonna discuss how we're gonna look at what we do with Jack Roby. That's something that we haven't had an opportunity to really sit down and have a session about that yet, but that is going to, yes, we're gonna discuss that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Questions of the board? Questions?
How are students doing academically?
Their academics on their ACT Aspire scores, we did see growth in a lot of grade levels. Overall, the scores are still low, not satisfied where they are. And that's something I think when they come back for their district improvement plan, identifying what their scores are and what their plans are to improve those. So their scores are still not where we want them. I will say that this is something prior to Jennifer being appointed superintendent in Pine Bluff this year at the beginning of the year. I can remember as we were walking through the campuses and just working with our team, and we were talking about Pine Bluff, and it was like this aha moment that we were talking about teaching and learning and academics. And it was the first time it happened, because since that point, we were trying to put out fires because systems were so broken in terms of personnel, right sizing, placement, buildings, facilities, transportation, safety. we weren't focusing where we needed to spend our time focusing. And for the first time, it's like we were able to do that. It's been, I mean, they've had quite a journey. They're not where they're supposed to be. They're not, but their systems and the foundation has been laid for them to actually start focusing on the right stuff. And I think the board has, this last semester, been having those conversations about teachers and licensing, and when you look at even their numbers of their 1240 teachers, it has been reduced, getting the right size, getting folks where they need to be. So we expect more out of their academics than what they currently have. They do have growth, though. When I looked at all their areas, almost every column showed some type of growth. Significant, not necessarily, but some growth.
Can we get a comparison at the, you know, the next time they're here, what the condition academically was that caused the state to take over? Which I believe it started with fiscal distress.
Yeah, they went under state authority for fiscal distress.
Was it ever broader than that? Did it become academic?
They asked, so their superintendent came and asked for additional support for level 5. So and the state then at that time took action and did authority for that and started assisting with academics. So they were not originally placed under state authority because of academics.
Fair enough. When that level 5 designation began, a comparison from, you know, the previous assessment to the most recent assessment, to see, you know, the full picture of the story of this state intervention.
Yep, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Stacy, so first of all, congratulations to everybody. I'm a Pine Bluff High graduate, so this is particularly near and dear to my heart, and I live in Jefferson County. So I am proud of all of the work that you all have put into this, and I know there's still a lot to do, but anyway, you have my support. I do have a question though about, you know, you talk about the condition that the district was in whenever you first walked in. I mean, you couldn't even talk about academics because there were so many other problems. Has there been any time spent in understanding what took them to that point? I mean, I think, you know, we have to have a lot of, you know, if we don't understand our history, we're in jeopardy of repeating it. And we've come so far, I just don't want us to repeat that, or any other district to repeat what happened in Pine Bluff.
I think that's probably a great question for their board. I can't say that as the state that we've sat down and talked about what was the pinnacle thing that caused this. I can connect it to, you know, other districts under state authority. There's usually other breakdowns, even when you look across the city as a whole. A lot of times you'll see their city councils are struggling. Yes. There's just like different infrastructures in several different places that are competing against each other. And unfortunately with schools, when that happens, you know, we end up hurting kids.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're absolutely, this is not a district problem. There are other outside factors, but again, I think I've mentioned this in another meeting, that, you know, are there signals that we can learn, you know, understand from what happened in Pine Bluff to make sure this doesn't get so bad in another area. I think we need to learn from it.
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Hunter. More questions down here?
I'll always add.
I think you have public comment too. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for the presentation, and thank you for the district for being here and the progress you're making. It is an exciting opportunity. I'm going to ask the chair and the board to consider previous trends. If we're going to go to a school and talk about the school, I'd like to consider having the meeting and at the school in Pine Bluff. I think they would want to host us and let us walk the classrooms firsthand and see the community. So that would be something I would ask the board to consider as well.
Thank you. It's public comment. Do y'all have the sheet for individuals who signed up to speak? I'll take a moment, actually, Ms. Smith, if you don't mind. So as the board is going to be meeting soon to talk about moving towards an elected board, is that something, what's the earliest that would occur? When is?
So what we talked about with Dr. Rice the other day, and again, I really charged him to go back to his board and have them talk about this too, instead of it's just in presenting it to you guys as this is what we think would help us moving forward. Well, one of the things we talked about was a transition with folks drawing lots, obviously, and then rolling off, like 2 roll off 1 year, 2 the next year, and then possibly 3 the next.
Okay.
And so that it would happen slowly over time.
Okay. Because it sounds like a lot of great work and training has been done with the current body. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all for coming today. I imagine most of you have spoken before, and remember we have a 3-minute comment window, but we're glad to hear from you today. We'll start with Rosalind Mauser.
Good morning. I'm Rosalind Mauser. I moved to Pine Bluff in 1965 as a 2nd grader in the Pine Bluff School District. I graduated from Pine Bluff High in 1976, and then in 1985 I returned to Pine Bluff to practice law, where I still live and work. Thank you for your work, your service to the state, your predecessors. I must say I miss Ms. Newton, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. Tuesday night at 8:30, we learned that our village passed a sizable millage by 680 votes. We did that without the endorsement of our local paper and without the endorsement of our local NAACP chapter. They say it takes a village to raise a child. That includes educating that child, loving that child, investing your time, your talents, and your money. We're going to raise $65 million in our millage bond. We went high because not only do we need a new high school, we also need improvements to other buildings in our district. So our board and our superintendent looked at all of that. That's a lot of money for Pine Bluff, Arkansas, our village. You and your predecessors are part of our village. You've heard about our history. I understand, before I got very involved like I am now, that we needed you to come take us over. We needed help. You made us look at ourselves with an honest and constructively critical eye. We've not always agreed with you and your actions, but being a village does not mean we always have to agree all the time. However, beginning in May 22, and Stacy referenced this time period, we felt we began to move in harmony. Not unison, but harmony. Remember, unison may not be the goal. Harmony may be the goal. What did we get? We got Pine Bluff and Dollaway merged, right? Our kids get along. We didn't doubt they would. Sometimes it's the parents that don't get along. Pine Bluff High School got a security audit, delayed sadly by the same company doing a security audit at Uvalde. We got a fence. There's no barbed wire on the top of the fence. Looks good. It's a good fence. We got Jennifer Barberie. I call her Super Barberie because she is a superintendent Barberie, and now you got to fit the doctor in somehow, right? She loves our students. I tell her all the time, I don't know why you're here, but you're here. And yes, we understand she's interim, but that may not be for long. We don't know. We got Mr. Gregg and Mr. Carlott, too. I did not know he was a DJ part-time. So all 3 of them are everywhere. They're everywhere. If we've had town hall meetings through our committee, our Pine Bluff Committee for Our Students, Our Future. That was our millage committee name. We raised over $30,000 in our little community for that millage campaign. 2 very large donors, Simmons Bank, Go Forward Pine Bluff. That addresses the earlier discussion about how the community has got to move as a whole. We've got to fire on all pistons. Our city council, our industry, our school, and for so long, we were not firing on many pistons at all. So Tuesday night at 8:30, when we learned we won, I thank the Lord for y'all. You came in, you helped us out. We're getting a new high school. Woohoo! We deserve a new high school. right? We look around, our kids go to competitions, music, sports, etc., to other high schools. They see what other kids have, and then they come home to our school where if it rains, there are buckets in the alto section in the choir room. There are buckets in classrooms because our roofs leak. There are bugs, there are rodents. So this, like Lisa said, should not have ever gotten to where we were. Our academics should not be where they are. But now we've got a new school. A new school alone doesn't raise test scores, does it? But I'll tell you one thing, it creates an environment where a child is more likely to come and be excited, and teachers are more excited to come. So thank you for being part of our village, and we're on a journey to success.
Thank you. Trammell Howe.
Hello. It's been a minute, but I'm still on this journey and been a part of this. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Trammell Howell, and I was the former PTO president for the last 6 years or so in the district. My last child just graduated as number 7 in their class, so he's gone off to college. So, but I've had 3 to come through Pine Bluff High School. So it's near and dear to me because I'm from here. I graduated from Little Rock Central, so I know that family feeling. So Ms. Rosalind said exactly what I had wrote down as far as you guys are a part of our family, because we know, I tell people all the time, I take a part of that blame for us to be in the situation that we were put in, because we didn't get that way overnight. And as parents and as community leaders, we didn't step up and speak out soon enough. But that's neither here nor there, because we're here now. We're all here and a part of this. So yes, we do know our past, and we definitely don't want that to happen again. That's why we definitely have the best board around town. That I put them up against anybody, because that board is definitely for us and for our children. And Ms. Barberie has been a life sent, along with Ms. Stacy. We can always agree to disagree, but she has been right here for us from the beginning. And I'm always so emotional when it comes to kids. It's all about the kids. And so for our millage to pass and for us all to be on the same page, finally, that's a plus. And for us to continue to move forward with the growth of their learning, that's a plus. So I just want to thank you all and let you all know that we're still here, and we know we got work to do, and we got to keep our boots on the ground to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rice.
Good morning. The Secretary of Education, Oliva, ADE board members, citizens, and taxpayers of Pine Bluff. My name is Cedric Charles Rice, and I'm Associate Professor of Biology at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, the second oldest institution of higher learning in the state of Arkansas, and an 1890 land-grant institution and historically black college and university. I also serve as an ADE appointed board member and chair of the Limited Authority School Board of the Pine Bluff School District. I am here to first thank the ADE and Secretary of Education, the board, and Dr. Stacy Smith for working so diligently with the Pine Bluff School District as we navigate the nuances of operating under state control, and as we hopefully prepare and share evidence to petition to regain local control in the near future. Serving on the Limited Authority School Board has been an amazing and life-changing experience for me. We work with a professional, influential, experienced, and energized superintendent. And we make decisions as a board that is composed of caring and dedicated members with the credentials, backgrounds, expertise, and professionalism necessary to build confidence in our community stakeholders and move the district forward. The board dynamics, interactions, and meetings with Superintendent Barberie have been productive, thought-provoking, often fun, but always professional, and targeted to the educational goals of the district. Our community has benefited greatly from the working relationship between the board and superintendent, as we learned how to communicate and train and work with each other with one goal in mind: our student success. To that end, I must mention that on August 8th, 2023, a few days ago, we made history and passed a millage that will provide the resources we need to build a new state-of-the-art high school for our students and energize our city and surrounding areas. Thank you to our supporters, parents, students, teachers, administrators, millage campaign committee, members, and industry leaders, businesses, pastors, and retired teachers who helped make this happen with their unyielding support, encouragement, enthusiasm, and of course, votes. There are also people and groups within our community who oppose the passage of the millage. Part of our responsibility going forward as supporters of the millage is to find common ground and work with those individuals and groups who differ in opinion for the betterment of our school district and the success of our most valuable assets, our students. We're also excited to be a part of the next conversation to regain local control of our school district, and I look forward to presenting evidence and a plan to the ADE board along with Superintendent Barbary in September. I would like to take this opportunity to invite Secretary Oliva and ADE board members to visit our schools in the Pine Bluff School District and or host an upcoming state board meeting in Pine Bluff. We're excited to receive you and your staff. September may be a good month to visit, but we appreciate your consideration to visit during that month or any other month. There's a very smooth and scenic highway, I-530, that can get you to Pine Bluff in less than 45 minutes. Just food for thought. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts, and thank you for the opportunity to serve on the limited authority school board of the Pine Bluff School District as a citizen of Pine Bluff, graduate of the school district, parent, educator, and taxpayer. Go Zebras.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Up next, we have Ms. Collins. We have two Ms. Collins, so y'all decided to go first. Sorry about that.
I'm Earlene Collins. To the chair, Dr. Moore, to Secretary Oliva, and all other board members, I tried to write some notes, but I really couldn't. And the reason I couldn't is because I learned about Ms. Barbary in a different way. I am first a retired assistant principal, Pine Bluff High School. I retired in 2015. I was a math teacher prior to that at Pine Bluff High School. I've seen all of the different phases of the school and the changes in it. Now, one of the things that I did immediately, we worked on the limited board. That was one of the, I co-chaired that with the committee that we were working on with at the time, and we spent a lot of time. I am very proud of the board. I think they are capable of doing whatever we need them to do. We support them, the community, 100%. And when it comes to Ms. Barbary, Dr. Barbary, by the way, I thought about her because when I first met her, I called her. I said, I need to meet with you if you have time. So we did. We met for a little bit. I kind of sized her up. I said, what I'm looking at is a person, I know she's interim, but she cares and she listens. And that was the most important thing to me because I bother her all the time. I might call her after school or text her. So when you get a minute, would you give me a call? And she does. It's never that she doesn't respond. And I look at that as a very positive thing for a person who's now retired and a part of the Pine Bluff School District community. It's a lot of us that care. It's a lot of us will stand behind Mrs. Barbary to help her do whatever she has to do. And she knows that, I think, because by my constant conversation with her, I have found that, and I always let her know, I'm available to help wherever you need me. I will get people together to help wherever you need us. There are some of us out here that are still working, even though we don't really have a job right now, but we are working. We work for Pine Bluff School District because we want the best for Pine Bluff School District. And I worked there when it was the best. And we want that to happen again. And I know Mrs. Barbary has been there only a short period of time, but it appears to me that she's a part of us. She has shown us that, and I am very proud to talk with her, work with her however I can, and work with the board. So we really appreciate you too, because we've been here a lot. even before we got Ms. Barberie, but we want to, on a positive note, help you to understand that we appreciate everything that you've done to get us to this point, and we are willing to do whatever else we need to do to support Pine Bluff School District, our school board, and Dr. Barberie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Now we have Ms. Maddie Collins.
I think it's still morning.
Morning.
To Dr. Moore, Mr. Oliva, and the board, we're just excited. Thank you so very much. I have a very few words to share. First of all, I want to say I love the kids, and they are awesome. Thank you so much for your support as well. I also want to say how proud I am of our limited authority board. It was so wonderful to work with Mrs. Newton and the committee who came to Pine Bluff. We did a great job in selecting this awesome limited authority board. And I was hoping that I'd get a chance to see Ms. Newton before now, because she was such a positive force. When she would come to Pine Bluff, every time we met, she always had a smile. And y'all, a smile means so very much, but I know you know that. And to be positive means so much. And she brought all of that. As you can see, we are proud, and I want to concentrate or leave you with these three words: love, care, and concern. That's what we are in Pine Bluff. And passing this millage showed it all. 62% of the Pine Bluff community came out and said, we love our kids, and we do. I must also say I taught at Pine Bluff High for 35 years. I have two awesome children who graduated from Pine Bluff High School. I am a product of the Pine Bluff School District. I graduated from Southeast High School. But I want you to know, our kids are wonderful. Thank you so much. Go Zebras!
Thank you, Ms. Collins. We have Gary Newton signed up to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Having gone through other handoffs, if you will, of state control to local control, the most successful transitions have happened when those elections are held, when voters actually vote. In Little Rock, it was in an even-numbered year. In Pulaski County, it was in an even-numbered year. In Helena, West Helena, it was in an even-numbered year that maximized participation and had more buy-in for the community than doing it in an off-year election. I don't believe the law conflicts with this vision, in that it is possible for the state to hand off control to an unlimited authority board and then actually hold the election in 2024 when people actually vote. I think you will get a better participation of the community, a better buy-in from the community, and at the end of the day, if we choose to govern our school districts by democracy, we should maximize that democracy. Thank you for your consideration as we go forward.
Thank you. That comes to the end of this sign-up list. Was there anyone else that signed up, Courtney? Okay, great. Thank you all for coming here today. Not your first time, and appreciate your continued support and sharing with us what's going on. I know, do y'all start school on Monday? Wednesday. Well, we will all be thinking about you and know y'all will be working very hard for that. So thank you. With that, what's next? I don't even know where we are. We just have a report by Secretary.
Yeah. Can I get the clicker, Chauncey, put up the PowerPoint?
Yeah, so that's
Do you want me to just do it from here? Where do you want me to go?
Your preference.
Thank you. So, thank you, board members, for allowing me to give an update. Also want to thank DeShawn Scarborough and the Martin Luther King Junior Commission for their work and allowing us to spotlight them and kick off what I think is a wonderful meeting, and hearing from districts like Pine Bluff and Helena, West Helena, and some of the progress they make. I think it's something we need to pause and celebrate on. For me, I can't think of a more exciting time of the year. I don't know if you all feel like this was the fastest summer of your lives, but I feel like this is probably one of the fastest summers I've ever experienced through a lot of the transition and the work we're doing. But I'm excited because some of our schools have already welcomed our young scholars back into classes, but a majority of our schools start Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So we'll be out and about visiting schools and welcoming everybody back and making sure that we're setting up the right conditions to be successful. We also had supported a lot of professional summer learning. We had almost 1,500 educators attend our ADE Summit this summer, which was really impressive. And I can't thank the team and staff here enough for the hard work that they do to continue to raise the bar of excellence across teaching and learning in this state. We recently were able to announce out of our top 16 Teachers of the Year 4 finalists. So I know we're going to be visiting some classrooms here pretty soon, but I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize that we're really proud to elevate and celebrate Nicole Franklin, an English Language Arts and Social Studies teacher at Orr Elementary School, and Jeremy Kennedy, an AP English Language Arts teacher at Greenbrier High School, Bo McCaslin, a CTE teacher at Queen High School, and Cassidy Seinlichner, who's a library media specialist at Hurricane Creek Elementary School right here in Bryant. So I know the committee is working hard, and we're excited to pretty soon be bringing back to the board a recommendation or a celebration for our Teacher of the Year to follow in the footsteps of Capri. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the board, is just do a little snapshot of some of the presentations and work that I've been engaged with, presenting to superintendents and school district leadership, and I like to call it a state of the state. We got some of our spring assessment scores back. How do we triangulate that data? How do we correlate that and look at some trend lines? And how does that support the work that we're going to be engaged in with moving forward? So I'd like to just go ahead and jump right in, if that's okay with everybody here. So I always like to say it's kind of fun with numbers. So I'm just going to kind of put random numbers on the screen and then pause so that your brain is activated, because you're trying to guess what do those numbers stand for and what do they mean. So I'm trying to use some of my teaching strategies. But the first number I want to talk about that I think is an important metric is it's the number 87.2. And the reason I think that that's important, because the work that we're doing here from early learning to 12th grade and beyond is to make sure that we're setting up adults to be successful right here in Arkansas communities. So we recently got our ranking that was released to us, which is considered the attainment rate of Arkansans. So 87.2% of the citizens that live in Arkansas have reached what they would consider as attainment. Attainment's measured by an individual that has at least a high school diploma, aged 25 years of older. So when we look at industry, I'm sure Mr. Henderson would agree, or businesses are looking to come to the area to look at pipeline of talent of workforce, attainment rates is one of the biggest indicators they look at. So we might think that 87.2 sounds pretty good, but if you look at the column on the right, it shows that Arkansas is 10th from the bottom when you look at overall citizens 25 and older that have obtained at a minimum a high school diploma. The next number I like to look at when we look at kind of attainment rate is the number of those same individuals that have earned at least a bachelor's degree or bachelor's degree and beyond. So you can see that there's a significant drop to 23.8 of our current citizens age 25 or older have obtained at least a bachelor's degree or beyond. I always find it interesting too that almost 5% of adults in our community never made it to high school. They almost 5% of our for our residents left the school system by sometime in middle school or maybe even before. So when we look at the work and the partnerships that's happening to provide access to adults to earn GEDs or high school diplomas and some of our career technical educations and our state colleges that are kind of, we talked about embedded courses today. for students in high school. There's some programs in this state that I think we should also recognize and celebrate that are embedding career and technical programs with high school diplomas so that the candidates can further pursue their academics moving forward. So I say all that to say if we're looking at making sure that we have Arkansans that are ready to be productive, ready to be employed, what does that look like, or how does that trend line impact some of the work that we're seeing at K-12? So one of the measures that we have currently in the state is the ACT Aspire, which measures student performance in grades 3 through 10 in English, language arts, math, and science. So we got our spring results back, and we started analyzing some of those trends. And one of the things that I think that we want to correlate is how are students doing now considered to pre-pandemic levels, which would go to the 2019 assessment. If you remember, we didn't have an assessment in 2020, so there's a little pause. So we want to see our students rebounding to pre-pandemic levels, and even at pre-pandemic levels where our students perform or where we had expected them or wanted them to know. So we can see some of the trends that post-pandemic rebounds continue to be a challenge. There's no kind of clear, consistent trend line moving in any direction. It just seems kind of a little bit sporadic. While some grade levels have increased in reading, some have also increased in math. So let's see kind of how this correlates and what we do. And I know we talk a lot about third grade literacy, but I'm also going to hone in on 4th and 8th grade math, which is a very important metric for us to look at when we're looking at students having accelerated opportunities. So this chart kind of covers a trend line moving left to right. You can see 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and this is our 3 through 10 ELA scores. So you can see the bar graph chart, the column in the blue is that pre-pandemic level at 2019. Then when we brought students back into our care in 21, 22, 23, are we seeing a trend line going back towards pre-pandemic level? Arkansas, as well as many other states, post-pandemic saw significant drops in literacy. A lot of states also saw almost double-digit drops in math and numeracy. So how are we doing for mitigating kind of the compounded effect that we may have seen due to the pandemic? So the metric we hear oftentimes is that 3rd grade. If you remember in 22, it was 35% of our students showed readiness rates or met the readiness rates that were measured on the ACT Aspire. So that was a pretty good increase from 21. So I think optimistically, with a lot of the work and priorities that we're engaged with, we would have seen that number go up in 23, but it actually declined 2.8%. And it's always kind of interesting when you kind of follow trend lines and try to see what the story of the data is telling us. Those students that took that 3rd grade assessment were in kindergarten during the year that we came back from the pandemic. So that was the year that we were over quarantining kids. That was the year that kids didn't come to school full days. That was the year that the computer tried to replace instruction for many of our students and families. And if there's anything that we know about those foundational years in literacy, being grounded in phonics and phonemic awareness and getting a systematic explicit instruction is critical. So these are students that may have had some disruptive patterns in their early literacy foundation in education, which is why we want to look at the safety nets that we have in place for our students so that we can fill in any holes and gaps moving forward. But then you see a little bit of an increase in 4th grade over prior year's performance. So that trend line is starting to move back up. If you go to pre-pandemic levels, it was around 45.3 of our students, and this is on the same assessment, demonstrated the proficiency or mastery rate that we would expect them to see. So a slight increase over previous years, not a decrease. So some of those programs in high impact tutoring and summer learning, I think we're starting to mitigate some of that learning loss and hopefully see some of those trend lines moving forward. So I kind of draw that correlation to 4th grade showing readiness rate, but then I also want to know, how does that look at, because we always get asked, how does that compare to students on a national level? Well, it's really hard to compare students across every state from each state assessment, because every state has their own state assessment based on their standards and the items that they want to write. But there is a snapshot in time called the NAEP scores, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, where they do a sampling size of students in every state to correlate how states are doing compared to other states. And they really hone in on 4th and 8th grade literacy and math. So when I look at those kind of correlations and trend lines in ACT Aspire, wanted to see how it does with Arkansas, and you can see the kind of national standard scale score across NAEP is 32% of the students meet that NAEP proficiency benchmark, which is two different things. It's not proficiency, correlated proficiency. It's two different assessments, two different definitions, excuse me, of two different definitions of proficiency, but you can see even on NAEP, considered to a national standard of readiness or proficiency, Arkansas is a little bit below, or is about two percentage points below what you would see on those national trends. And this was based on the NAEP assessment of 2022. So if you look at historically, you can see the top line is the national public average on the standard scale score, and then in the darker blue line is Arkansas. So historically, we've been trending kind of in a different, little bit below the national average, and in fact, it looks like around, was it 2005 or so, that Arkansas was catching back up, and then started seeing a little bit of a decline. And even nationally, you can see there's a decline in overall performance of students, especially since that post-pandemic level in grades 4. So to me, there's opportunity and why we're investing in early literacy, and we're going to talk about what some of those systems of alignment are so that we can address and reverse this trend line. If you go back to that same chart, I said let's hone in on 8th grade literacy. So you can see pre-pandemic, it was around 53%. So starting to see more students by the end of grade level, and back in 23 at 50% demonstrating grade level expectations. And then you start seeing a sharp decline in 9th and 10th grade, which I think we're going to talk about some of the work that we're doing to address that as well. But you can see that about 50% of our students show readiness rates in 8th grade literacy. And if we were to correlate that to NAEP, you can see that the national average is 29%, which that's why I'm saying it's two independent assessments, but that Arkansas is still about 3 percentage points below the national average on scale score. So there's opportunity to look at 8th grade literacy rates and make sure that we're able to increase those trend lines in numbers. And in fact, if you look at our basic scale score, you can see there's been a little bit of a decline from the past few years. And in fact, I want to say our 22 scale score is the lowest it's been since 98, since this bar graph has been showing it. So to me, there's opportunities. I often get asked questions why we're reimagining alignment between standards, assessment, instruction, and why we're doing a holistic approach, which is really a lot of foundation for LEARNS, is because we have a lot of data that shows that we need to do something drastically different. If I kind of shift that same narrative and conversation towards math readiness rates, you can see I'm going to hone in on that 4th grade, still a little bit below pre-pandemic level, but trending in a little bit more positive direction. The pandemic, we saw significant declines in math, not only in our state, but across the nation. I think kind of my theory of practice is even when we were on lockdown or sent home, not in school, access to books and reading, kids may do that on their own, but not many people are pulling out their graphic calculator and solving quadratic equations on their own. So having an opportunity to practice and hone in those skills may have been impacted. So you can see in math, almost 50% of our students were showing readiness rate. And I think it's important to remember that what readiness rate really is looking at is ACT Aspire as a college and career readiness assessment, and it's identifying students that if they stay on that path by 11th grade, they would score a 22 on the ACT. So that means they're college ready is what that definition or benchmark is. So this is where I think have even more opportunity. I know we talk a lot literacy, and we talked about some of the work we're doing in math standards, but even according to NAEP, in 4th grade, Arkansas is not just below the state scale score, it's significantly below where students are expected to perform in 4th grade math. So you can see about a 7 or 8% differential between the standard scale score when you kind of correlate that over time, you go back to that early literacy years in the mid 2000s where Arkansas was catching back up and then kind of started declining following those statewide trends. And you can see that there's a pretty significant gap between the national public scale score and Arkansas scale score of who's meeting those proficiency benchmarks. I'd like to hone in on 8th grade as well. And you can see there's a little bit of decline historically when you get from 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and a significant decline in 9th and 10th, which is why I want to talk about those math paths. Board Member Wood asked about that earlier, and we have data that's showing some trend lines and some theories of practices of why we asked you to approve some of the things you approved today. But if you look at 8th grade, it's showing about 38% of our students are meeting that readiness rate, which is a slight decline from previous years, but still pretty far below where we were pre-pandemic level. And even significant, as mentioned by NAEP in 4th grade, in 8th grade, Arkansas's 8th grade math performance is still significantly below the national average. It's not slightly below, it's significantly below. So those are some kind of trend lines that when we look at ACT Aspire and student performance, and then when we look at NAEP assessments, we see some of those same opportunities. And ultimately, I think we're working on what we're doing so we can see those attainment numbers go up and make sure that the standard high school diploma is the expectation for all. So the questions, and here's the trend line in math performance, which is similar to the other graph. So questions we often get asked is about how are we going to fix it, and what are some of the things that we're going to address. So I like to say that when you look at data, this is one piece of data that tells one piece of the story. So how do you triangulate that and look at patterns for us to invest in and create those opportunities and dynamics? I always like to say let's talk about the ABCs of school improvement and learning. And this has kind of been the foundation of when I've been meeting with principals and superintendents and teacher leaders about these are some of the things that we need to monitor and make those instructional pivots, and not wait till the end of the year when we give an assessment and just hope that everything went the way we were expecting it to. So when I talk about ACTs, I like to talk about attendance, behavior, and course performance. And the first thing that I think is interesting when I say to the board there's opportunities is there's a common definition that a student is chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of the school year. And that's for whatever reason. That could be excused absences, it could be unexcused absences, it could be because they're on field trips, it could be any reason. They're just not in school. So 10% of school year means a student in most of our districts miss about 18 days. Interestingly enough, going from district to district, and this is one of the indicators that we measure, there isn't a common definition of what does it mean to be present and what does it mean to be absent, right? So as we're thinking of having opportunities of how we collect this data, because data governance is one big piece of the story, because in some schools, in some school districts, if you are there after 30 minutes of school starting and you were only there for 10 minutes, but you were there for, let's just say, one period, you're considered present. Some may say you have to be there 2 to be considered present. Some may say you have to be there 6 out of 7 periods to be present. There's opportunity to say, what does it mean to be present? What does it mean to be absent? Then also behavior, do we have the right systems in place to make positive learning environments where students want to feel welcomed and engaged and have access to high quality, rigorous opportunities? How are we measuring that? And then course performance, what are students taking? How are we monitoring whether or not they're passing their grades? And how are we making those instructional pivots? So when we talk about attendance, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the numbers we're seeing. So I'm going to start with the number 18, because currently, when we pulled this last year's set of data, in 7th through 12, 18% of Arkansas students were defined as chronically absent, meaning they missed 10% or more of the school year. The research is really clear. Every day that you're absent from school, you lose a day of learning. Now, my challenge to schools and school districts is what are the systems and structures we in place to try to monitor student expectation, especially at the secondary level. I know even when I was a high school principal, one of the groups of individuals. I was pretty guilty of making sure we're chronically absent the last 2 periods of days was athletes, because we always had to release them early. Can we look at strategies around schedules and making sure we're finding opportunities to keep kids in school? But one of the numbers that I thought was kind of interesting when you're looking at that holistic correlation of chronic absenteeism, any thoughts of which grade was the highest level of chronically absent students? There's no wrong answer.
I think it's the seniors.
See, yeah. So I typically would hone into higher grade level students, but 1 in 4 kindergarten students were chronically absent this past school year. 25% of our kindergartners missed 18 days of school or more. Now, that's typically not the kindergartner's fault on why they're not going to school. So we have to have honest questions about what can we do as a state, what can we do to support districts to make sure kids come to school? Because just like we saw those 3rd grade results on that cohort of students that were coming back to school during post-pandemic rebound, these are those foundational years to set students up on a pathway for success. So when you look at K-6, the 2 highest grades across the K-12 spectrum is kindergarten and 1st grade. Why does that matter? It's significant, and it matters because if you look at the research, and this is from Attendance Works, if you go all the way to the right bar graph, if you are chronically absent in pre-K, K1 and 2, you're almost 100% at risk of needing intervention in literacy. That's just coming to school. But if you go all the way to the left and you're not chronically absent in pre-K 1 and 2, you're almost 100% likeliness of being a literate reader. That's just coming to school. How are we making sure students are coming to school, and what can we do? What are those tiered systems of support? So we want to do a lot of professional development work with our leaders to really define what are those tier 1 universal systems of support for students that are missing less than 10% of school. Then if we identify students that are missing more than that 10%, how are we working with families? How are we developing individualized plans? And how can we identify and address attendance barrier issues? Oftentimes I hear a lot is transportation. If the student misses the bus, they stay home. And so maybe we need to look at finding more innovative approaches to that. And then for students that are really missing 20% or more of the school year, are we getting them referred to children in needs of services and family needs of services? And have we really defined whose role is in owning each of those steps? So when we look at attendance, we need to make sure that we're getting students to school. And when they get there, they're getting access to high quality learning. An interesting part when looking at chronic absenteeism, and this is data that was pulled pre-pandemic, so we don't have current national data post-pandemic, but according to pre-pandemic national data, 30 to 39% of our teachers were chronically absent. So I think we need to work with districts and find innovative ways to recognize and reward teachers for making sure they're coming to school each and every single day, because when a student misses a day of learning, it impacts that student. When a teacher misses a day of learning, it typically impacts an entire class. So I think if we're starting to ask ourselves different questions around the different types of data, you know, historically, when you look at the summative end of the year assessments, those are the outputs. Let's talk about what kind of data can we monitor to look at inputs that have a direct correlation into those outputs. I'm going to shift a little bit towards behavior, seeing the different trend lines and asking ourselves, do we have those positive behavioral support systems? I definitely hear from school districts and principals that they're having challenges with more egregious behaviors happening in their schools. The data is showing that those total disciplinary infractions from year over year did increase from the previous school year to this past school year. These are the types of incidences and the number of incidences that you can see. 2021 probably stands out a little bit post-pandemic. When students were at home, they didn't get suspended from school. So I think that's kind of an interesting correlation. But you know, we don't want to continue seeing this trend line, because I go back to chronic absenteeism. If students are getting suspended out of school, especially for frivolous infractions, then they're not having opportunities to learn. What is it that we can do to help build out those positive behavioral systems and making sure that we keep students engaged in class and in learning? So we're going to work with districts on that. Then I also want to talk about course performance. And this goes back to kind of some of those accelerated opportunities. So if you remember in our 4th and 8th grade math indicators, in 8th grade I want to say it was around 50%, or maybe it was 4th grade, showed about 50% of our students were showing readiness rates to be accelerated through the math continuum. But this past year, 17.9% of our students, you can see, took algebra in middle school, which is one of those indicators if you're going to be on an accelerated math path, which is significantly below that 50% readiness rate to show that you're on path to be in college. And a lot of these school districts just may not have the bandwidth or the opportunity to offer high school credit while in middle school. We had a rule that you passed that would not have to require a district to request a waiver to be able to do that. Because the reality is, if you're going to be on an accelerated path, a lot of these programs require you to get to different levels of math. And if you haven't taken algebra by 8th grade, it's really hard for you in 9th through 12th to get to higher levels of calculus or to get to some of the extra courses that we just approved today, unless you have robust accelerated opportunities while in high school. So I think it's an opportunity when you look at overall enrollment. We have to stop focusing on remediation and start pushing acceleration, and that means that when students are ready to be accelerated, they have that opportunity. 30% of our students this past cohort of 9th and 12th graders took what I would call an accelerated opportunity, meaning they took at least one advanced placement class, one concurrent class or dual enrollment. You can see almost 19% of the students took an AP class, about 12% were doing concurrent credit. Really small presence of international baccalaureate opportunities. There isn't any ACE programs, which is the Cambridge education system in the state, which there may be an opportunity to provide more rigorous programs to our students. But still 30% of our students, when we have trendline data that says at some certain benchmarks that over half of our students should be on an accelerated path. Are we really creating those opportunities for students to be accelerated? Are we offering these courses when the students are ready, or do we just say, in 9th grade you take algebra, in 10th grade you take geometry, in 11th grade you take this, even though we know we have students that may be ready for more rigorous expectations? Those are honest conversations that we just have to roll up the data and ask ourselves these questions. Are we providing access? 20.76% of our seniors this past cohort took and passed an industry certification, which I think is really interesting. Dr. Moore, you asked about concurrent or embedded opportunities to earn core courses with CTE courses. One of the things that we're really going to work on as we're developing that career high school diploma is identifying what is a credential of value and what does it to mean to be in a rigorous career and technical education program. Because I would even say that some of these certifications that students are earning their senior year are really middle school industry certifications. And if you look at the lack of certifications in 7th and 9th grade, it's almost non-existent. So what are we really elevating as saying this is a certificate of value? So we're gonna have to come up with a definition of that. And if we say that you should be a program completer and earn stackable credentials, if you're waiting till your senior year to have an opportunity to take an industry certification, you're not having an opportunity to stack these credentials. So that's why the work group's really going to start mapping out what are those paths, what are the prerequisites, what are the maths, what are those industry certifications look like. So there's a lot of good work happening, but I think as a system, there's opportunity to push when we want to see these students participating in certain programs, especially if they're ready. 117 students last year graduated with at least an associate's degree at the same time as they graduated with their high school diploma. I think that's a significantly small number. I think we need to add some comments to that. There's plenty of students in our schools, in our district, that can earn concurrent credit, and there's some challenges to why that's not happening, and we have work groups that are looking at that because we need to better build out our course code catalogs, have common definitions for enrollment fees or credit by hour fees that the district's responsible and the college is responsible. I can tell you there's a lot of appetite for this, but providing these rigorous opportunities for our students, you can see with those small number of outcomes, it's going to be in very limited school districts, and we want to make sure that every child, regardless of the district they're enrolled in, has an opportunity to earn concurrent credit. When we look at the number of students that have full schedules, this past cohort of seniors, and we talk about earning concurrent credit and advanced rigorous opportunities, to Mr. Wood's question about students that leave K-12 and have to go to remedial math, you've heard me talk about that below college algebra. In college, 65% of the students had a 3.0 GPA, but there's a gap between leaving K-12 and readiness, and I just find it interesting that 47% of our seniors last year didn't have a full schedule. What were they doing? I don't know. So if they're leaving our system not ready for post-secondary attainment, or they're leaving our system without earning concurrent credit or industry certifications, and we're not putting them in a full schedule, there's opportunity there. And these are the kinds of conversations I think we need to lead and be engaged in as a state, as we look at kind of a holistic approach to reimagining our system and making sure that it's aligned. And a lot of this work is also going to be grounded in the work that we're doing with LEARNS. And when we look at why we did everything holistically, touching everything from early learning, K-12, and post-secondary, when you look at these trend lines in data, you can see that there's opportunity. And when you look at historically where Arkansas ranks on even national assessments for the last 20 years, it's not trending in the right direction. So we're going to hit refresh. We're going to work with school districts. We're going to get the system aligned. And what this board has already done and taken big steps to do is to get great English language arts and math standards in front of our educators, that they can understand what those expectations for learning are. And you saw the math trend lines of readiness rate in 9th and 10th grade drop significantly on ACT Aspire. Well, that's when students start taking end of course exams. So we kind of put teachers in moral predicaments by saying you're teaching algebra in 9th grade, and that's what the student is assigned to, but they're going to take a 9th grade assessment. So does a teacher stop teaching algebra to make sure they teach all the skills that are on the 9th grade assessment, or do they not teach what the student needs to be in a course to be progressed so that they can make sure the students are ready for the assessment? We see it in science. You could be a 9th grade biology teacher. If the assessment is a grade level science assessment and 40% of that assignment is based on physical science, does the teacher have to stop teaching a life science to teach the physical concepts and do reminders? We took a big step by getting high quality standards and then writing a test that measures those standards, that we can say this is what we expect students to know and learn, and going back to end of course exams in algebra, biology, and geometry. That's going to fix some of these trend lines. It's going to fix some of those math trend lines, because if we can start offering algebra and geometry to students that are ready, you're going to see a big bump in 8th grade readiness, because right now, if we're holding them to grade level expectations, they're not getting exposed to the rigor that other students that have that opportunity in other states around us are. And so we're taking some big steps. This board has taken some big steps for alignment and making sure that our standards, our instruction, and our assessments are all aligned. So I'm excited for this school year, because this school year we're going to have that in place. And then even further, we're getting ready to help school districts with those early literacy years by getting a unified coordinated progress monitoring system in K1 and 2 to support teachers to make those instructional pivots and decisions. But two of the biggest pieces of LEARNS, or two of the things that I get asked a lot about with LEARNS and LEARNS implementation, and I kind of told the board I want to go into a deeper dive on LEARNS at the next board meeting, but I think it's important for this board to hear about some of the work we're doing with literacy and what we're doing with training with the literacy coaches, because we have to act with urgency. So I'm gonna ask Stacy if it's okay if she comes up and talks a little bit about the timelines of the milestones that we're gonna hit and what we're doing. I don't know if you want the clicker.
So we got into a lot of this conversation last night around the background with, I think, Mr. Wood, you asked the question, why are we not having success? Where are we? And so kind of looking at that timeline piece that we talked about last night, 2013 is when the dyslexia legislation and the screening passed, and districts started that process. In 2017 is when Rise Arkansas Initiative launched and the Right to Read bill passed. It wasn't until that 2019 that we started vetting professional materials and high quality instructional materials that aligned with what we were teaching, right? And so 2023, in terms of LEARNS, the LEARNS Act's passed, and now it's directing us to be able to go in and directly coach teachers in classrooms, implementing high quality instructional materials aligned to the science of reading, and making sure that we've got screeners in place that are identifying students in needs. So this coaching piece in terms of implementation and fidelity at a classroom level is us getting those systems pieces aligned. So when we look at the Arkansas Literacy Support System with the coaches, right now we have 78, we confirmed this, 78 state coaches, okay, that will be going directly in. Most of those coaches are assigned to schools. All right, and then we have 189 schools right now that we have identified as receiving support. So for the most part, those 78 coaches will cover the majority of the schools. The schools that are not covered, we talked about this last night, partnering with a high quality professional learning partner, and then following that same coaching cycle piece that we have. Dr. Pride's team is being very strategic about who's getting assigned where and how that looks. There is a protocol to our training. There are templates and forms that everybody is consistently using across. There are feedback forms that are going to be utilized with superintendents, principals, and the coaches. So there are lots of parameters being put in place to make sure that this is successful. Regarding what the district supports are and the district's responsibility with this, is districts need to ensure that they have high quality instructional materials, period. And that is something that we'll be expecting from all of our districts. We have been collecting that information about who has what. So we have identified areas in the state where we need to work directly with those schools to make sure that they have the right materials. That districts are also providing training with those materials to their teachers. That is a huge component. Just buying the box and putting it there in the classroom and expecting the teacher to use it without the proper training is not where we need to be. Okay, so making sure that the district is providing training needed. Also using the literacy screeners to identify students who need additional support. Dyslexia legislation regarding screening has been around for a long time. But this is an area that we feel like we have to improve in as a state. Different districts use different screeners for all the different components. As a state, we have written, and we talked about this unified assessment system, we have written an RFP to try to procure a statewide assessment that would be a statewide screener for K-3 that would also encompass the components that are within the dyslexia screeners. We want to be able to set at a state level actual cut scores, that if a student is below this level, they need either more diagnostic assessments or an individual reading plan or intervention. So we want to be able to set this consistent score across the state where people in schools, so it's not a question. Should they be getting help? Should they not be getting help? So that is something that we've written the RFP, we've met with procurement, so hopefully that will be released pretty quickly. Also within that system, we want it to be able to assist districts in their individualized reading plans because we want a diagnostic piece about it. We want the skills identified on what students specifically need to be working on, and we want school districts being able to write intervention plans specific to the needs of a student. Writing in a plan after-school tutoring is not specific. Writing in a plan, summer school is not specific. We want specifics. So our goal within this procurement process is that we can create and gather a tool that will assist schools in doing that. School districts, though, for this school year are expected to continue on with their intensive reading intervention plans or individual reading plans, and to also work with us to provide ongoing coaching to strengthen their practice in the classroom for their teachers. The state's commitment within LEARNS is that we're going to be providing literacy coaches to those schools that have been identified, and that we're going to use an observation coaching cycle and protocol with all of these school districts. We're also doing that. I just talked about the screeners, but the best-in-class curriculum, that we definitely are making sure that we're still identifying curriculum that can be used and making sure schools are using those curriculums within their classrooms. And the last part, as far as the state support that will be coming out pretty quickly, that's a part of LEARNS, is the access for tutors for students who need additional support. LEARNS allows a $500 for families who have students who have been identified as needing support for tutoring. And so there is a process going on right now on us being able to vet the different vendors that those funds could be used for, and identifying students and families that could qualify for that. It is based on a first serve, first come, but we also have to go through a process in which we're going to identify. So the rules and procedures for that are being fleshed out right now. So what does this mean for this next school year? So this summer, we've already identified who our schools are. They have been assigned, the Kiffany's group has been hiring literacy coaches. And again, we alluded to this last night. We've gotten the process of hiring, and then we had to stop, and then we had to go back and hire again. And so our training and getting everybody on the same page, rolling out, that's happening as we speak. All right. Kiffany's team, though, has worked so hard. I'm extremely proud of them and all the work they've put into this. Our expectation is on Monday, you're going to see literacy coaches in schools. There'll be boots on the ground in schools, and that's the expectation. In the fall, we're going to release the guidance on the screeners and the RFP. The ADE literacy tutoring grant should also launch in the fall. Hopefully in the winter and spring, we're going to start seeing some school districts maybe piloting the screening tool that we've identified and making sure that we can identify where those cut scores are going to be and what a robust individualized reading plan looks like for districts to follow. And then in the summer, we'll be able to put that out for everyone. Literacy coaches and their responsibility and what their day looks like. Again, we're trying to establish a very clear vision of what the expectation is. Coaches are expected to be in classrooms. 60% of their time should be in observation, coaching, or direct support in the classroom to the teacher. 20% job-embedded professional learning and training, looking at data analysis, assisting the school district in determining their needs. 10% in school partnership, working with principals on collective reading goals for their school. And 10% that additional coach cohort responsibilities as far as them attending professional training, them getting in their reports. One thing I did not say about that 60-20% there is a key piece to principal and leaders in the buildings and their responsibility in doing classroom focus walks, making sure that they know what to look for and identified. We've done a lot of assessor training in terms of what you should be looking for as a principal in science of reading. This, with the coaching part, is making sure that they really have that skill set. So that's the third part on that.
So I know we just kind of covered a lot, and I always like to remind everybody we have the LEARNS portal established, and all of the pertinent reports, all of the committees, all of the reporting out. That's just a place that you can start moving forward in finding out for more information. So today my hope is just kind of give a high-level overview of the state of the state, how this data is some of the metrics that we're going to be monitoring as we put forth a lot of the initiatives that we have in place. But then next month go a little bit deeper on, okay, so this is the actual product, this is the actual work, because there's going to be a lot of rules coming to our board, but we need to have a common vision for why we're implementing these rules so that it makes sense and that we can see how this is part of that big piece of that blueprint. So with that, Chair, I'll conclude my report and pause to see if there's any questions.
Thank you. Thank both of you for providing a lot of really great information.
I hope it wasn't too overwhelming.
It's a lot. It's great. Questions? Let's start down here.
I think something that comes to my mind is, how do the schools know what high-quality materials are? Do you have like a rubric that you send out? How do they know?
I think that's a great question, and our team goes through and evaluates the material, and they've actually established a portal it's the HQIM portal, where they've identified materials that meet the benchmark or the expectation of the rubric.
So when the legislation first passed, the Arkansas Department of Education, we actually created our own rubric and expectations. One of the things that we did early on was if your textbook was based on the 3 queuing system, you were automatically disqualified. And so that was really kind of that whole language piece that we were trying to move out of the state as we move forward into the quality literacy programs. But in the beginning, our own ADE literacy specialist reviewed several different programs. We actually have a list on our website. Here recently, we've created a partnership with EdReports, who they have a specific Arkansas rubric, and they are also assisting us in reviewing programs for the Arkansas page for literacy. So it's very specific to what we say has to be in the program.
And we haven't arrived in that space by any means. So there's good options and choices for districts. We definitely hear 6th through 12th, a desire for more programs to be identified. And then even as we're going through the math numeracy component, really identifying those high quality instructional materials. Because we often say in education, the standards drive the curriculum, not the textbook. But the reality is teachers need to rely on their primary instructional tool. And the better tools we can give teachers, the better outcomes we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking back as a school board member years back, one of the things I think is important to remember that the standards are minimum standards. One of the things that Springdale required was another math course to keep students in school longer, especially that senior year. And I think that's real important for us to think about and maybe help educate to the districts to really challenge your students to take more courses than are required.
I agree, and I think the evidence is showing that there's opportunity there, and especially when you get into math and post-secondary folks, sometimes they'll say like college algebra is the gatekeeper to success in college, and if we can provide more rigorous math paths for our students, especially our students that are ready to be accelerated, even if they get to their senior year and have taken all these maths, they can still take college maths. Take college calculus. Like, fill up your schedule, and let's keep challenging students and not have this sense where we can love our students into mediocrity. Mediocrity is not going to work. Like, we've got to push and set these high expectations. So I agree. Those are opportunities and the kind of conversations we should have.
Well, and I'll just editorialize, but if we have only 53% of students with full schedules, yet those districts are receiving full funding for those students, there's a lot of disconnects that need to happen.
Good point.
Okay, questions down here.
I don't particularly have a question. I just kind of have a few comments. You know, it's really intriguing to see the bold moves in regards to career readiness. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about the Pine Bluff Millage, teamwork, working together. You know, when I think about, you know, there was an announcement came out earlier this week Arkansas Steelmaking Boot Camp, where career, Office of Skills Development team donated 1.2 million to produce, to encourage, to advocate career readiness. And, that's just phenomenal. I mean, when I think of teamwork, state government, educational partners, and industry working together for one common goal. Loving the bold moves of moving in the right direction to create opportunities for not only Northeast Arkansas, but for the remaining of the state. We can't even begin to imagine the seeds that we are planting with these bold moves and with the teamwork. So some really exciting times. It's a good time to be in Arkansas right now.
I just had one question on this, but how is the rollout in general going? I mean, we've hit August 1st, and so I know that snowed everybody under, but from what rules we do have that need to be implemented, how's that going?
So, great question. So we've continuously hosted webinars, provided technical assistance, presented at conferences about planning for implementation. So now that we're at implementation, the one area that we wanted to prioritize, and we were able to work with some of the folks in the legislature with some of the emergency rules around the educational freedom accounts. So that group has been working round the clock to find schools that want to participate and work with families to get everything they need updated and qualified, because school's starting. Families are making decisions. So right now, as of today, we have about 94 schools that have been approved across the state for year one. And each year there's different eligibility requirements over the next 3 years. And I want to say there's about 5,000 students or families have applied or showed interest in seeing if they can qualify for that. So for implementation, we're on track with probably the one program that gave us the one we need to act with urgency to make sure that the program is up and running. The transition from early learning to the Department of Education is probably another big major obstacle and hurdle when you're looking at not just programs and technology databases. Like I look at a Regis team, like they all have different applications, they all have different employees, and they have to be put in our agency. But then how do we make sure that all of the payments that go to the vendors and the supplements, and that there's no gaps of service? Because the last thing we want to do is have a gap of service. So that was a lot of work to ensure a smooth transition. So we were able to make that happen. And then now we're really just kind of mapping out the rules, and like we had school safety today, and because we want to prioritize the ones that we have to act with urgency on. But there's a lot of great work coming to this board. We have not arrived by any means. We're going to continuously have to look at data to engage in those cycles of inquiry and talk about, are we moving the needle the way we want to? And if we're not, did we do what we say we were going to do? And if we are doing what we say we're doing, it's not moving, what are some other best practices and strategies we can put in place? So, in fact, earlier this week, we were mapping out all the rules, not just with LEARNs per se, but just all the legislation. And I want to say there's about 50 rules coming to the board. So we're working on just giving you just kind of an aggregate snapshot of all of this is coming, just so you can start familiarizing yourself with some key things. And one of those key metrics that I think is really important, I'm excited about too, is just kind of really rolling up into that early learning space and getting a handle on all the early learning providers and services. And we're tasked with defining kindergarten readiness. Having a statewide definition of what does it mean to be ready for kindergarten is going to be real significant when we're looking at the data that we want to monitor, because there's a school district tell you there's a strong correlation between third graders that are ready to move to fourth grade and kindergartners that come in ready for kindergarten. So if we can help invest in early learning environments, if we can support our teachers and in schools with evidence-based approach to literacy, when we get to those critical benchmarks in third and fourth grade, we're going to make sure those students are on a path for to be accelerated. And that to me is why this is some of the most exciting, engaging work we can be in.
Ms. Keener has a question online. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I had two, one more of a thought, less of a question, and then I do have one question regarding the literacy screener. So honestly, to hear that 30 to 39% of our teachers were chronically absent is shocking to me, and quite frankly, I'm kind of appalled at that number. And I'm interested to look deeper into that data, and I know that's what y'all are working on, but if we're seeing trends in certain districts or trends in certain schools, if we see similar numbers in administrative absenteeism, if, I think it's about kind of creating that culture within the school. But I also know that there has to be a need for balance between, helping teachers set sort of that good work-life balance and honoring that if you're sick, it's okay to take the day off, but also you need to be there for your kids. It's just a really tricky balance because I think we need to prevent burnout. I think that we know that the workforce isn't there to replace, if teachers are chronically absent. It'll just be really interesting to see the department's work sort of in that area, and hopefully we can see some changes in that trend. And then just a little question on the literacy screeners. I'm excited about that. This was all so much wonderful information. And I'm curious if you kind of already foresee what that's going to look like if, speech and language pathologists will give those screeners, if it's something that the literacy coaches will do, or if it would be classroom teachers and if they'll have training to support them in offering those screeners. If you could just speak a little more to that, I'm curious. Thanks.
So, thank you, Ms. Keener, and also I want to make sure I give you a proper welcome to the state board. I think you're going to be a wonderful asset, and you bring a lot of knowledge and expertise to our work, and so I'm personally really excited to be able to work with you more on these initiatives. I want to go back to the 30 to 39% because I don't want to make sure I'm clear that this isn't painting a bad brush, like teachers are just refusing to come to work. That also includes other parts of our work when we look at things like temporary duty elsewhere. And so part of what I would ask principals is if teachers are going to professional learning where we're pulling them out of class and getting them a sub to once or twice a month to go to a training or a professional learning, are we being strategic on who we're asking, if we're asking the same teachers, because I'll be honest and transparent, even when I was a principal, I was guilty of, oh my gosh, I had my best teachers and we needed them to do work, so I was always getting them a sub and pulling them from the classroom to help lead to professional learning in the school. But then now that I've reflected on that, I was taking my best teachers away from their students, and that wasn't a good strategy. So I don't want to be critical and make it sound like that people are refusing to come to work, but are we doing things as a system to protect teachers' classroom time? And how do we make sure that that's the priority? And you're gonna have to do professional learning. There's requirements that are gonna happen, but are we being strategic? And how do we take that approach? Those are some of the challenges or wonders that I would have. But in regard to the literacy screeners, right now we have some screening requirements around the dyslexia component that are already in place. And then school districts progress monitor student performance primarily in that kind of K1 and 2 space because we don't have a statewide assessment in that early learning environment. But right now everybody does something different and none of the data talks to itself. So it's really hard to just kind of get a snapshot of how we're doing and where as a state we want to prioritize and utilize resources. So part of that vision and learns that came out with identifying a unified coordinated progress monitoring system that embeds those literacy screeners is really being strategic so that one, we have one tool that we can embed statewide, and two, it also protects teachers' times because they don't have to stop and do progress monitoring and stop and do dyslexia screening. We can create a tool that does it all together. When we get that data back, that data, I like to look at it as it's almost like an annual checkup to the doctor. You might get to your annual checkup and they look at everything and say, okay, everything looks good, see you in a few months or see you next year. Or they may say, I think I'm gonna refer you back to get some more blood work or look at some other things. That data will be able to kind of identify, all right, who's on path, who's getting what they need, who may need to be accelerated because if you get a perfect score on a third grade assessment on day one, you need some more rigorous opportunities. And we have students that do that, and then I want to go back to how are we challenging them and pushing them along. But it may require addition diagnostic and distance screeners, and depending on the way that district's organized may depend on what that data's saying and who would engage in that work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the alternative lens and looking at teacher, the chronic absenteeism, because that is certainly something that I know happens often and can definitely play into those numbers. So I appreciate both of those answers. Thank you.
Can I go back to something when you were talking about the freedom accounts and the number of I'm looking at your cheat sheet right there. The number of students that have applied, or you said, is it 94 private schools that have signed up to receive those funds? Have the rules been written on what the private schools or services they may have to offer that public schools have to offer?
So we were able to do emergency rules around that space. They're not the final rules, so we were able to put some of those rules in place so that we can get the programs up and running, because there was specific criteria outlined in statute, and we have to verify that all of those conditions have been met. There is a work group that's still going through and trying to they will be updating those rules. They'll look a little bit different when they come in front of our board to go through the legislative process, because there's always lessons learned, and there's things that aren't in the emergency rules that we realize we probably need to clarify a little bit better in the more permanent rules. So that work is still ongoing and going on.
And disbursements started yesterday, is that right? Like through the 9th through the 10th?
I'll have to verify that date on that.
More questions of board members? Ms. Kinnear, did you have anything else? Okay, well, is that it? That was a lot of, and I'm sitting here
I'm just
thinking
getting
about
warmed up if you're not.
well, how I wish we had every superintendent and principal here in the state to have that conversation with them too. They're very busy doing their work, so not today, but there's just a lot of data and a lot of conversations to be had of how we as a state are supporting their work and need to build them up where we can. So thank you and your agency for putting that together and sharing with us. So with that, I guess that's the end of our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, and I'm sure there's a second. We'll be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have lunch.
That's right. Lunch is here.
Lunch.
Over in 201A.
Okay, so did y'all hear that?